Hello and welcome to Off the Bench here on a Thursday morning here in Southwest Ohio. Reed Mouse with Stone Shields. We got a fun show for you today. Later on, we're going to be talking some UC Bearcats. Keegan Nickerson's going to come on the air. It's funny. Keegan Nickerson, a local of this area, went to Ross High School. Last night, I went and watched a Ross volleyball game. My cousin's the head coach. They didn't come out on the right side, so we're having a Ross-centric show here today. Mailbag later on. I know you guys love the mailbag, but Stone, thank you so much for filling in yesterday. I know you had some good interviews. How'd the show go yesterday?
Yeah, it was great. Appreciate you organizing those. Paul Frischner, he was incredible talking. Xavier hoops for the most part. Did talk some UC hoops there at the end. I was talking to Paul afterwards, and he's expanding what he's doing in college basketball this year. So we'll have him on and venture out a little bit from just UC and Xavier, so looking forward to that. That was awesome. And then Craig Salen, guy never disappoints, so we had a good Bengals conversation. I know you later in the day had a good conversation with Craig as well about Joe Flacco, which I'm sure we're going to talk about on this show.
Yeah, Craig's like the adjunct professor. Yeah, rebound rundown. Paul started that here when he worked for Chatterbox, and he's taken it and he keeps growing it, and hopefully that thing continues to grow. Paul is a great guy, and I wish nothing but the best for him going on. But yeah, last night I sat down and I talked with Craig Sandlin. Obviously, the news came out yesterday that Joe Flacco, it didn't come out yesterday, but Zac Taylor had a statement where he said it's 50-50 that Joe Flacco is going to play this Sunday, which – when things were already as bleak as the sky is here in Hamilton, Ohio for the Bengals season going forward, hearing that the guy you traded for midseason, the guy that has played very, very well since taking over the role of starting quarterback here in Cincinnati, Joe Flacco, when you hear that he might not play in a game that is, funny as it is a must-win. We say that every single week, but is a must-win this week at home against the Chicago Bears. When you hear that and you're like, man, we got to go back to Jake Browning after seeing the difference between the two quarterbacks this year, it's something that isn't good. It isn't good. And me and Craig, we sat down and we talked about the 50-50 talk. And the point is that it feels like Joe Flacco, who's dealing with a problem, a strain on his joint, on his throwing shoulder, it feels like he is going to play. It feels like the most pessimistic thing said about Joe Flacco revolving this injury is when Zac Taylor said he's 50-50. Both Dan Pitcher and Joe Flacco have come out and said, hey, I think I'm optimistic about him playing. I think he's going to play. And Zach might be playing a little smoke and mirrors game like Aaron Glenn did with the New York Jets last week. Be like, I don't know who's going to start, when really deep down he knows that Joe Flacco is. Now, Joe Flacco didn't get any reps in practice yesterday, so that is a bit alarming. But it feels like we are trending in the direction of Joe Flacco playing this Sunday. And that raises the question of, okay, what does a banged-up 40-year-old Joe Flacco look like? Because this is the same Joe Flacco. I know he's been great for the Cincinnati Bengals this year. He got benched for Dylan Gabriel just a month ago. A little over a month ago. So it's not like we are dealing with a banged-up Joe Burrow, which we would take a 50% Joe Burrow than any alternative here in Cincinnati. So what does a banged-up Joe Flacco look? And I don't know what that looks like. Obviously, his whole game is centered around his ability to spin the football, his ability to throw the football. And if his throwing arm is a little banged up, what does that look like? Is he still going to get it to the same zip to Jamar Chase? Is he still going to be able to hit that 44-yard route to T. Higgins for the touchdown? Or all those things. Now, we still like the mind of Joe Flacco, right? His ability to read defenses, his ability to go under center, which has clearly helped our run game. But I'll say this. If Joe Flacco does play, things once again here in this town are depressing when it comes to this football team. There's some other exciting things, and we'll get to the exciting things when it comes to the UC Bearcats, when it comes to FCC. We're going to have a guest on tomorrow talking about FC Cincinnati. But in a city where it feels things are just depressing when it comes around this Bengals team because of a loss to the New York Jets, I'll give you this spin zone. The Bengals were 2-4 coming off that loss to the Green Bay Packers in the first game in which Joe Flacco started. We looked square in the face of a 3-game home stretch against rival Pittsburgh Steelers, the New York Jets, and the Chicago Bears. And every single Bengals fan, myself, Stone Shields, all of you guys watching, before playing those 3 games, based off the way that the Cincinnati Bengals had looked, would have said I would 100% take a 2-1 stretch over the next 3 games. 100%. Now, pretty much everyone would have said that thinking, you got to win against the New York Jets. But every single one of us would have taken a 2-1 stretch over that 3 games. And that's still on the table. That's still right there for a taking. 3-point underdogs against the Chicago Bears, coming off a loss to a backup quarterback and the Baltimore Ravens. But you're at home. Hopefully there's some health with Joe Flacco. Hopefully he's not going to be at 100%, but hopefully he's near 100%. Because we've seen the light and day difference between Jake Browning and Joe Flacco. Because we've seen the major difference that we can have with this quarterback, that when you have a competent quarterback play, when you have someone back there that can spin the ball, that knows how to read defenses, that can get rid of it quickly, that can go under center, that this offense is still as highly potent as any in the league. When you got a playmaker like Jamar Chase and you just get him the ball 10 times a game, good things happen. When you got a guy like T. Higgins who, if they forget about him for a second, even though he's not getting targeted a whole lot, when you forget about him for a play or two, he can break it downfield for a 44-yard touchdown. When you got guys like Samaje Perine and Chase Brown out of the backfield that are capable of making big-time plays. Now we need to see some better play from the other playmakers, the Andre Yoshivasas of the world. But that's still open there. So, Stone, before we get into our mailbag, which will take up the most of this first half hour on the show, your overall opinion on A, do you think Joe Flacco is going to play this week? And B, what do you think a banged-up Joe Flacco looks like?
Yeah, it's a good question. Obviously, one that we're all pondering right now. I think earlier in the week, like on Monday, immediately following the game, everybody's in shambles about the Jets loss, and rightfully so. And I was kind of sitting here like, this isn't a guarantee that Joe Flacco is going to be able to go this following week against Chicago, and it hadn't really gotten much traction early in the week. And the next thing you know, Zac Taylor's at the podium like, yeah, this thing's a 50-50 shot, and we're preparing Jake Browning like there's a chance that he could go out there and be the starter. I've never had a sprained AC joint myself. I've been reading about it a little bit over the past couple of days. Apparently, it is very, very painful, and it's not in his left shoulder. It's in the right shoulder. Right, that, of course, is the moneymaker for Joe Flacco here at this point. Look, not to sit here and disrespect Jake Browning. We've done a ton of that, but I would, a really banged-up Joe Flacco that can't throw it more than 25 yards down the field, I would still take that over Jake Browning. So we'll see. I'm hoping, obviously, that he can go. It's a must-win game regardless, right? You can't lose this game going into the bye. I think you can pretty much put a bow on your season at that point as far as playoff hopes go. Right. But we'll see. You mentioned the smoke and mirror stuff about, potentially pulling a bit of an Aaron Glenn. There could be some truth to that. But it is one thing that is very noteworthy is that, it's like he hasn't been here for so long, so we don't necessarily feel great about him not practicing and then playing. But at the same time, he started the Green Bay game when he came here a few days prior to that. So even if he doesn't practice this week, I do think there's a chance that they'll roll him out there if he can go. And obviously they'll talk to the doctors and talk to Flacco leading up to the game. But if there is a chance that he can, just throw that ball at least 25 yards down the field, I think you're going to see him roll out there and try to give it a go. Yeah,
this team doesn't know what it looks like. Really, truly doesn't know what it looks like with a guy with getting 0 reps throughout the week or limited reps, what this team's going to – I know they did that week 1, but even then it took a half before this offense really got turning. So there hasn't been enough rapport with Joe Flacco here yet to really feel comfortable with a team that with a quarterback that isn't going to get reps. And one thing that I think is pretty clear is that even with a banged-up arm, the reason we are taking Joe Flacco, or we'd prefer a banged-up Joe Flacco over a healthy Jake Browning, is just because Jake Browning showed pretty much no ability to read defenses. And that's the thing that Joe Flacco has come in, is when they are blitzing, when they're sending 6 guys, they're able to read that quickly. When they are bringing some pressure, he's able to read that quickly. He's able to get rid of the ball quickly, and we're running the ball better. So it's just working better with Joe Flacco, and that's why we're going to take a banged up Flacco over Jake Browning. We're a day late. We're a day late on the mailbag. That is typically a Wednesday portion of this show, but we checked the DMs, we checked our email, and we had some great questions from the many, many viewers of this show. So it is the favorite segment of the week. It is Off the Bench's mailbag. Stone, who do we have sending us in some mail today?
All right, here we go. First question of the Wednesday mailbag this week. Dear Off the Bench, this feels like an incredibly violent year regarding the coaching carousel in college football. From James Franklin to Brian Kelly and everywhere in between. Is this the new normal in college sports? And that comes in from Cat Dog, a.k.a. Sir Boy Wonder.
Sir Boy Wonder, now going by the name Cat Dog. Did not know that. Then I'll be sure to call him Cat Dog from here on out. Yeah, it does feel more violent than ever when it comes to college football. And listen, I know you guys know my opinion on college football, but I'll say this from someone looking from the periphery. There is new normals all throughout college sports, from the transfer portal to NIL to really just the state of higher education in this country as we sit in the year of our Lord 2025. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of headwinds in pretty much every capacity there. But if there's one thing that the world has always shown us, if there's one thing that this nation has always shown us, that when there is a heavy amount of change, when there is a drastic change in anything, that there is gold to be made. There is a fortune to be made. That there are people that are out there coaching young guys or guys that really haven't gotten their shot yet or guys that are middling under this current format that are going to be able to navigate this new world of college athletics, the NIL, the transfer portal, everything in between, that haven't gotten their opportunities before. And those guys will kill it. We saw this in college basketball 15, 20 years ago when they started the one and done rule. For the longest time, the way that you won in college basketball was that you got guys in and you developed them. By the time they were seniors, they're ready to roll, and you're making big runs into the NCAA tournament. Then all these big teams started getting these one and done guys, and they're just more talented. Coach Cal, just more talented than the old head coaches. There's going to be guys that you haven't heard of. There's going to be guys that are middling, that are able to navigate this current world better. And then there's going to be guys that have had a lot of success in the old college football realm. You sit down and you shake hands with the players' parents and you do things kind of the old school way that are going to be faded out. Just the way it is. And I will advise these programs that are going to be hiring new head coaches that maybe, just maybe, the best way to hire a coach going forward, because we are just such a new, unforeseen territory, isn't hiring the guys that have had success in the past, but it's maybe trying to have to project a little bit, be like, hey, you seem like a young guy. You seem like a guy that can, fundraise pretty well. You seem like a guy that can convince people and charm people to not only come to your school, but stay at your school, because you got to constantly recruit. So maybe it's not, hey, this guy's had success here. This guy will have success in the new spot. Maybe it's you have to project. You have to look at the characteristics. You have to look at the strengths of each individual person. That the way that we've always done hiring in this world, and it's the safest way, is that, hey, what have you done in your past? Now you got to look at these guys and go, hey, what are you able to do? Stone, I don't know your opinion on college football and where it's headed. It does seem very violent. It does feel like this might be the new norm, but I think that there's going to be dust settling here soon once new coaches have kind of propped up, come up every way, that are able to navigate this new world.
Yeah, I think, is it going to be as crazy as this year? Probably not, but I think it's going to be crazier than years past. Like, for example, this year, I mean, you got LSU's open, Penn State's open, Florida's open, Florida State could become open, Wisconsin, we'll talk about Fickle in a second, that could become open, Stanford, UCLA, those guys, are interim guys right now, Virginia Tech, that's open. So there's a ton of, and, Belichick, he could very well be a one and done at Carolina. So there's a lot of big-time openings, and there could be even more going forward. But I think just the landscape of college football right now, the sense of urgency is so high in this sport. And if you're putting together these rosters where you're spending all this money, I mean, you can't really afford to take it slow. Like, they want to win, and they want to win now. These boosters and these athletic programs, you can't afford to mess around and build this culture for 3-4 years. There's a sense of urgency. There's a lot of money that goes into these football programs here. So I think it's going to be more common that guys get on a hotter seat quickly, and if it ain't working, you fire them and you go from there. I mean, when you fire these coaches, I mean, these schools, they can afford it. Like, it stinks or whatever to pay coaches when they're not out there coaching. They're sitting on their couch, but in a lot of times it's kind of a rounding error for a lot of these schools where it's like, yeah, we'll just fire him, we'll pay him off, and then we'll move on and try to hire somebody else. So in this age of college football, I think this is going to be more common just because there's so much urgency with guys getting paid. I mean, it's literally ran very similarly to the NFL, and you see it with all these GMs now at the college level, and there's going to continue to be more, and it gets more and more like the NFL each and every year. And if you're not winning in the NFL, you're not going to have years on end to sit there and try to correct it. You're going to lose your job. And I think you're going to see that be a little bit more common at college football now. But is the LSU job, the Florida job, or those massive jobs going to be open every year? Probably not. But there is going to be more of a carousel, I think, going forward.
Well, I think also another thing, and I think there's going to be a more carousel in the short term. I think long term there will be a little bit more stability. I think it's just such rocky waters right now that everyone's like, what are we doing? We got to act quick. We got to be nimble. We've got to traverse this new era of college football as quickly as possible. One area that I think that is going to change is these guaranteed contracts that these coaches are signing. I don't know. I do know how they got these contracts in the past. I don't know if they'll get them in the future, because when you're dealing with this money, these boosters have a bunch of money. These schools have a bunch of money. But they also didn't have to pay their employees until recently, to where a great majority of the money could go towards facilities and head coach. That's not the case anymore. When you're dealing with $20 million going to now these college football programs, it seems a lot harder, a lot more difficult, and it was never easy to begin with. It seems a lot more difficult now to pay someone $60 million just to go away. I don't know how they're going to be able to navigate these waters, because it does feel a little bit like the genie's out of the bottle. And if you're a coach that wants to go to a new area, if you're not going to guarantee me $60 million, I ain't coming. But I will also say that might not be the worst thing in the world, because I do think that young coaches with a newer mind might be the better way than established guys, to where these schools say, like, we're done doing these $60 million guaranteed contracts because we've got to pay these players. We don't have as much money laying around as we always did. The biggest expense for any business is the personnel, is your employees. So now that they have to pay the players, there's a lot less money to go around. Now these schools have plenty of money, but I'm just telling you, they're not going to be able to take on 3-4 different $60 million guaranteed contracts just because it didn't work out in 3 years. So I do think that's going to change. Next mailbag question.
Dear Premier Ball Knowers at Chatterbox Sports, are the New England Patriots for real? Or better yet, is Drake May for real? Last season, this Pats team looked completely inept. This year, they look like a team that can threaten in the AFC. Your opinion on the New England Patriots and their quarterback, Drake May. Truly yours, Bill Belichick.
Ooh, Billy. Billy Football watches our show. Bill Belichick. What about that? And he's asking about his own team, the New England Patriots. See, he still loves them. The New England Patriots looked like the worst team in football last year. Obviously, the big news here in Cincinnati was that we didn't beat them week 1, and that's what kept us out of the postseason, but that's all in the past. It's a true testament to two things. One, you put in a world builder or a team builder like Mike Vrabel in the NFL, to where I just said that maybe in college football, you don't look for these players. You don't look for these coaches that have had success elsewhere. Maybe you should go for some younger guys and give them an opportunity, to where you're not going to be spending $60 million if it doesn't work. In the NFL, I think the opposite holds true still to this day. It's that when you get guys that have had success, when you get guys that have had true culture-building success, like Mike Vrabel, you just kind of knew it was going to work. And the reason the New England Patriots went after Drake May was because it felt like he was a guy that could rival the talent of a Josh Allen. So they immediately look like not just true contenders or a playoff team. They look like someone who can win the AFC East, which that looked like the Bills were going to lock that up for 20-plus years. And now, all of a sudden, you get Drake May in there, you get Mike Vrabel in there. Are they the best team in the AFC East? They look really good. Yeah, I do think they're for real. Yeah, I do think Drake May is for real. He's a playmaker. He's a big, strong guy. He can move with his legs. He's got a big arm. This guy is a playmaker. So, yeah, I think the Patriots are for real. I do think they're going to be a contender in the AFC going forward. Drake May, I do think he's for real. I will have a little bit of pause because the last few young guys, and I know this is Drake May's second year, but the last few guys that we crowned as, oh, this guy's the next great quarterback, C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud, 2 years after his rookie season, doesn't look that good. And I know he's got some problems with the offensive line and stuff like that. We got Jaden Daniels, who had as an electric of a rookie season as I've ever seen. And because of his frame, because of the way he plays, he's on the IL a whole lot. And he doesn't look that good even when he's playing. He's clearly hurt when he's playing. So I will have a little bit of pause for crowning this is the next great quarterback, but they look for real to me. Stone, you?
Yeah, I totally think they're real. It's an organization that's obviously been very stable for a long time. With the Kraft family there at the top, they've always, prioritized football and prioritized winning. And, obviously things got rocky there when Tom Brady left and they tried the Cam Newton thing and the Mac Jones, and then they just kind of treated what they did with Mac Jones was kind of weird, and they're putting Zappy in every other possession. It was just kind of – they needed a restart. And you talk about, people all the time with Bill Belichick, he was just too much of a grouch, and that's fine when you're sitting there winning all the time. But when you're losing, people just kind of get sick of that. And they moved on from him. Didn't love the hire of getting Gerard Mayo. He didn't have any head coaching experience, so that was kind of rocky last year with Drake May's rookie year. And then Mike Vrabel, he's available. He's on the open market. The fact the Titans let him go is just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, this is a top-end coach in this league. And in this league, when you get the coach right and you get the quarterback right and you give him a left tackle, pass rusher, you can be really, really good. And I think the Patriots check a lot of those boxes. Totally think they're real. May, as a quarterback, he does everything you want from a leadership standpoint at the podium, from his arm talent, his mobility, right? I mean, he's rushing for like 50 yards a game, which certainly is an advantage for that offense there as well. Mm-hmm. McDaniels hasn't worked out as a head coach, but the guy's an outstanding offensive coordinator. He's great at developing quarterbacks, so he's got a lot of help around him, and he's got all the tools he needs. I think at this point, I don't even think you need to say dark horse. I think he's an MVP candidate. Sure. Mahomes probably going to separate himself, I feel like, at some point, especially if they have another big win against the Bills this week. But, I'm looking at the Drake May and the Patriots potential MVP guy, and I think that, I've got him at 4 in my power rankings. And I know some people probably laugh at that and say that's too high. They haven't played a ton of really good teams. They beat Buffalo. That was impressive. Their schedule certainly has been favorable, but there's always a couple of teams that, miss the playoffs, and then they make the playoffs the following year, and it's kind of hard to pick out those teams. The Colts certainly appear like one of those. I think the Patriots are as well. Wouldn't surprise me at all if they won a playoff game. Not going to go out here and say Drake May definitely is going to be the best quarterback in that class, but it's certainly trending in that direction.
Yeah, he looks good. There's no doubt about it. We got 2 more mailbag questions. Let's get through them before we bring on Keegan.
Nicholas Reed Mouse and Michael Stone Shields, a couple of guys that go by their middle names here.
That's right.
At the show. Word around the rumor mill is that Luke Fickell is widely hated across the coaching brotherhood, which, of course, is the general sentiment around another former UC head coach, Brian Kelly. 1, do you think Fickell will be fired in Madison soon? And 2, do you think it weird that it seems like a common trend from UC head coaches? From Sebastian Duvet?
I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
We appreciate the question, though.
Yeah, we do. We do appreciate it. Thank you, Sebastian. UC, Luke Fickell's done, right? It's the fans, the Wisconsin fans are done with Luke Fickell, and it seems pretty clear that his time is running really near. And I don't know anything about Luke Fickell. Obviously, There's talk if you listen to a lot of podcasts, if you listen to a lot of coaches and stuff like that, people that are in that sphere, they don't speak very highly of Luke Fickell. He doesn't seem to have many friends, and you can kind of tell by the way that when he goes to Wisconsin and people want to stick around or go elsewhere, it's a good indication of how you're thought of by how many people follow you. Like if you're a head coach and, hey, they'll follow you wherever. We saw this with Brian Kelly going down to LSU, and not a lot of people followed him there. I do have a story about Luke Fickell, which I guess I'll say on air, and that is 4 years ago, 2021, Chatterbox was commissioned to do a fundraising event. Bearcat Air. It was a fundraising event. Brought our video board down there, stage. We did some sound work for them. And it was a fundraiser for UC Athletics to get jets, to get private jets, to get money for that, and to really help the athletic program be able to get around and get to the recruits and talk to the recruits and watch recruits as much as they needed. And they were raising money for that. And the head basketball coach at the time, Wes Miller, or still the basketball coach, the girls basketball coach, her name escapes my mind, so I apologize for that.
Katrina Merriweather.
And then it was Luke Fickell was there as well. Well, we'll say the event started at 6, and they have this, coaches Q&A and stuff like that, and the event ends at 9. Whenever Luke Fickell was supposed to talk, reminder, this is for his program to raise money so that he can get PJs and go around the country. He showed up to the event. If he was supposed to be there, if the event started at 8 o'clock, he showed up at 7:57, went right on stage, answered questions for 5, maybe 10 minutes, and then left. And that was, didn't sit, shake hands with any of the big donors, didn't talk. It was in, out. It was football season. Sure, he was a busy guy. This was when they were still one of the best teams in the country. But it was just a kind of event. And listen, people are busy all the time. But it was something that definitely struck odd to me. And then you hear these rumors that, hey, this guy isn't well regarded amongst other coaches. He's lying about letting coaches into letting NFL coaches get into. Sorry, Stone's talking in my ear, so like it gets a little distracting. But he's not letting NFL scouts come to their practice and stuff like that, and lying about it, even though it's just seems really weird. I don't know if there's a common trend there. I just know that Brian Kelly isn't well regarded. Luke Fickell's not regarded. Tommy Tuberville's a senator, or it's going to be the governor soon, or whatever he's doing in politics. So it's whatever you got there. I don't know what's going on there. Final mailbag question. We'll do it quick before we bring on Keegan. Stone?
To my good friend Stone Shields, which I don't know how I feel about that, and his dumb yet righteous partner Reed Mouse. I think regardless of what the Bengals do the rest of the season, Zac Taylor should be fired, even if they make the playoffs. I've seen enough from him as the head coach. The players aren't developing. They consistently start slow, and it seems like it's just not working. What is the benchmark for the Bengals pulling the trigger on getting rid of Zac Taylor? And that comes in from Jeffrey Epstein.
You're good friends. You're good friends. Wow. Oh, man, Stone. We got to talk about that after the show. I don't know what the bench line is. I'm on the same board as him. It just clearly isn't working, and I've been a big Zac Taylor fan. I know that if they make the postseason, if they do something cool and make the postseason, he ain't going anywhere. And to be honest, sans a 6-11 year, I don't think he's going to be going anywhere. I mean, maybe it's 7-10, but if he goes 8-9 and they're kind of scrappy, I don't think he's going to go anywhere. And my opinion is as follows. If Mike Tomlin or John Harbaugh become available, done. I want those guys here. I want one of those. And it seems like Mike Tomlin might be, if this Steelers thing kind of slides, even though the Steelers don't fire their head coaches, if this Steelers season slides, which it just might, Mike Tomlin might become available, and I think that they should call him up right away. I think that's my opinion. I want a good team builder. I want a good defensive mind here in Cincinnati. And I like Zach. He's been great, but 6 years, and I think I've seen enough. Stone, you got anything to add, or should we get straight to Keegan?
We get straight to Keegan.
You're blindsided by your friend DMing here from the grave.
Yeah, all right.
Keegan Nickerson, one of the.
How we doing?
Yeah, on the Bearcats beat, baby. Keegan, it's nice to see your handsome face, and not just at Planet Fitness from time to time. Keegan's recently married, and I'm going to start off this interview with this. My wife works out at Hanover Reserve from time to time as a bartender.
Okay.
Which is where you got married. And she came back one night on a random I forget if it was a Friday or a Saturday, but she comes back
Friday,
and she goes, man, we just had this party, we just had this wedding. It was a bunch of Ross kids, and it got out of control. Got absolutely out of control. So I guess I'm giving you kudos on throwing a heck of a party, Keegan.
If you give like 200 Ross people unlimited Busch Light on draft, it's gonna get out of control, and that's what happened. So I'm happy we could deliver a fun night. I think at some point I was on a table with my beautiful bride, like dancing,
man.
like standing on the table. So it was a fun one.
Rams on elevated surfaces. That's exactly what you need, Keeg. All right, let's talk about the UC Bearcats. Thank you so much for coming on here. So UC, I feel like coming into this year, there was kind of a lot of questions about where this football program was heading. Coach Satterfield, there was a lot of fans that weren't really happy with the way that he was taking it. Obviously, they are ranked right now. They are undefeated in the Big 12. How realistic are the Bearcats' chances at winning this big boy conference in the Big 12?
I think it's very realistic. And I was talking with Dave Simone, who's kind of on our team at Bearcat Journal, last night on a podcast, and he said, I did not think at this point in the year that UC would be going into a game against Utah, and where if they lost the game against Utah, they would still have a legitimate path to making the Big 12 championship game. Because you see how like this season's shaking out in the Big 12. Texas Tech loses to Arizona State, and now they have to play BYU next weekend. And that's going to be a huge game with massive implications, whether UC beats Utah or not. Houston has one loss in the Big 12, and they have a pretty manageable schedule to end the season. They could very easily win out. And then UC can win out as well. They're a legitimately good team. They have good leadership on offense. They have a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. The defense has been kind of suspect at times, but they have playmakers and they play to their identity. And I think a lot that frustrates a lot of people sometimes when you're playing loose coverage and giving up a lot of passing yards, but they've kept teams out of the end zone. And that's the name of the game on defense, obviously. Mm-hmm. But it all comes down to Brendan Sorsby. He's a kind of a dark horse Heisman guy right now. He isn't like exactly blowing up the stat sheets, but he's playing really, really efficient and successful football. I think it's 22 touchdowns, 1 interception, 7 rushing touchdowns, just under 500 rushing yards. And he's a really, really good leader. And I think his decision to stay and really commit to UC right after last season, literally after the last game, spoke to what he wanted to build, and you're starting to see that result kind of pander out here in the season.
Based off, I was taking a look at the bedroom behind her. Are you okay? Are you like you're allowed to put stuff on the walls here, Keith?
Oh my
gosh. You're allowed to.
I'm in witness.
Blink twice if you're not okay. Okay, so just blink twice.
I look like I'm in witness protection. I'm in the grinding part of my 20s, and me and my wife are staying in the in-laws' basement. So this is kind of the room next to our room. So like there used to be just a random recliner back there.
Oh,
there wasn't even a bed. It was just a recliner sitting in the middle of the room. So this is an upgrade from what it used to be.
That would be a startling thing to walk into a room and there's just a recliner sitting in the middle of the room. You mentioned Brandon Sorsby, and you mentioned some people are going like, hey, this guy has a dark horse chance to win the Heisman. He's in his second year at UC. What have you seen? What are the biggest improvements? What are the big steps that you've seen Sorsby take from last year to this year?
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't think he's playing that much better of football compared to what he played last year. The difference is he has the weapons in Cyrus Allen, Caleb Goody, Jeff Caldwell, Noah Jennings, and Isaiah Johnson that they didn't have last year. And these guys are creating separation. The trust that they have is there. I mean, he trusts all his receivers 1 through 6, especially when you add in Joe Royer. And then also the turnover-worthy plays are really down. The catastrophic turnovers are down. And, a lot of the times you see him just take a dump off to Evan Pryor, and he ends up getting like 10 yards because he's a really talented running back. when last year he would try to stretch it downfield or force something in a window that just wasn't there, and then it ends up being a turnover. So you're starting to see him play really efficient football. And when he's not turning the ball over, you can really see just how talented he is as a quarterback, how quick his release is, how confident he throws the ball, and kind of how much he can stretch the field. And it's been a ton of fun to watch. I think he will probably go down as one of the best quarterbacks to ever come through Cincinnati. Right up there with Tony Pike. He probably is the best pure thrower. And I think Tony Pike would even tell you that, as a guy who has won a lot of games at Cincinnati and seen what it takes to have success. I know Tony Pike loves watching Brendan Sorsby play. Yeah,
it's when you watch him, sometimes you watch a guy like when Des Ridder was here, won a lot of games.
Yeah.
You didn't always see the talent, right? You obviously was winning, controlling the game. You watch Sorsby play and you're like, oh, this dude's a baller. This dude's got some skill. Outside of Sorsby, who are some unsung heroes on this roster?
Ooh, that's a really good question. The first one that comes to mind is Noah Jennings. He's a Charleston Southern transfer who came in this past transfer portal class. He's probably the number 4 option as a receiver, but he plays like a number 1 option. Like Sorsby takes shots downfield and fits it into tight windows to Noah Jennings, and he's made some huge plays this year. If you recall the Kansas game, they had to go down with, I think, under 2 minutes left. They had a 4th and 10, and he makes this huge one-handed catch and leads them to a touchdown later in that drive, which leads them to a win. And if they lose that game, which they were literally an inch away from losing, there's no telling about what happens the rest of the season and where this team is at. But that game and that win has really vaulted them into this position. I'll go to the defensive side of the ball. I think a lot of people who watch Cincinnati and are fans of Cincinnati know about Jake Golday. But this kid, like, he's going to start in the NFL for 10 years. Like, I am so confident in saying that. He's got like 4.4, 4.5 speed. He's 6'4", and he's a converted defensive end. So his ability in pass rush is really there. And he's kind of that guy that, if there's a big spot on 3rd down and it's late in the game and he can flip that switch of I need to make a play, he's going to go make the play. UC's player personnel department just found this guy out of nowhere at Central Arkansas, got him on campus, and then the immediate returns last season were huge, and this season he's even better. And I think earlier in the season he was getting talk for like a possible 1st-round pick based off what scouts were seeing. It's kind of faded a little bit now, but for a linebacker to even go in the top 2, top 3 round, it's very impressive, and it's proof that you're one of the best linebackers in the country.
What's the biggest test going forward? The one this weekend, this Saturday?
This game gives me the most pause in picking Cincinnati to win. I think the rest of the games throughout the season right now, I would pick Cincinnati to win against BYU at home, against Arizona at home, and then finish off with TCU in Dallas. I think TCU is a good team, and that can definitely give UC a lot of trouble, and TCU can win that game. But if they lose this game, they could be playing TCU for a chance to play in the Big 12 championship, depending on what else happens throughout the Big 12 race. So this is probably the toughest test, but I mean, you look at Utah, I don't see how this is a 10-point spread unless they think Evan Pryor is just that good, because he's going to end up missing this game with a lower body injury. But the good teams they've played, they beat Arizona State when Jeff Sims started. So Sam Leavitt wasn't playing for Arizona State. And then they lost to BYU at BYU. And then they got walloped at home against Texas Tech. So I think that this is a really big pressure game for Utah, because they're kind of in a scenario where if you lose, you're done and you're out of the race. And I wouldn't want to be where Devin Dampier is right now. He didn't start last week. They bring in a true freshman quarterback, and he throws for like 300 yards and runs for 150, scores like 4 touchdowns. It's looking like Dampier is going to start. And if he makes that early mistake, everyone on the sideline, every fan in the stands is going to start thinking, oh gosh, we should probably go back to that true freshman. Playing with that pressure is tough, and maybe he can throw a turnover or two. What I will say is I'm going to brag on myself here.
Go ahead.
In the preseason staff predictions, I picked UC to go 9-3. Right now, I'm 8-0 on my game predictions, and I picked Utah to win this game. So I'm still going to pick Utah just on the principle of trusting myself and trusting how good I am at my job, of course.
Of course.
And then we'll see how it goes down the line. But UC can very much win this game. I think the spread should be closer to 5, 4.5. So if you're a bettor, I would advise to pick UC to cover. I think they're really poised. They're experienced. It could honestly come down to like a false start in the fourth quarter that kills a drive, or a missed field goal on either side of the coin.
Earlier in the interview, I talked about how coming into this year, it seemed like Coach Satterfield was on thin ice coming into this year. That was the sentiment, at least amongst fans. One, was that the sentiment that you read from the room, which was, hey, this thing might be on thin ice, like his job might be in peril if the season doesn't go well? And two, he pretty clearly has saved his job a little bit more. Do you think he can continue to build on what he's done this year?
Yeah, I think the sentiment coming into this year was definitely that he was on thin ice. I don't know what it would have specifically taken for John Cunningham to pull the trigger on firing him. I think 6-6, he would have been safe. Anything below that, and you have to have a serious conversation. And in terms of what he can build going forward, it's going to be tough. I mean, if they finish this year 10-2 and Sorsby continues playing well, I could see him exiting for the draft. I could see a lot of scouts saying, this is the kind of guy we want. We want a guy that makes plays with his legs. He's confident with the ball. He's accurate. And he's a pro with the media already, so there's no seasoning that has to happen there. You lose Jake Golday. You lose Dante Corleone. You lose Joe Royer, Cyrus Allen, Jeff Caldwell. Gavin Gerhardt's gone. You return some O-line next year, but the biggest thing you have to do on is hit on a quarterback in the portal. And, they're losing Jack Dingle as well, a linebacker, other defensive linemen. A lot of their DBs are in their last year of eligibility. So it's going to be bringing in a lot of guys. Like, it's going to be a portal class where they bring in a lot of guys that are expected to contribute immediately. So I wouldn't go into next season confident that they're going to have this success. I would say, just based off what the player personnel department's been able to do over the past 2 years, having to replenish a full roster, I would say they'd be confident enough to be 7-5 or 8-4. That just the early returns, but it depends on who you get at the quarterback position, because obviously, as you've seen, that's what determines everything.
Obviously, when you're bringing in a bunch of guys through the transfer portal, having a season like you're having this year makes it a much more attractive landing spot. It's much easier to tell a kid, like, hey, look what we're doing right here, right now, and you can be a part of this next year. Like, you can attribute to what we're doing here next year. So it's pretty timely for Coach Satterfield in that regard. Let's flip it over to the hardwood. Basketball starts next week. College basketball starts next month. How good are the Cats going to be this year?
I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. Because, last year I was thinking this is going to be a 3 or 4 seed. They're going to finish like around the top of the Big 12. There's just too much talent. Like, there's no way it can happen. And then Jizzle James struggles. Dylan Mitchell, he was consistent, but he didn't exactly provide what UC thought they were going to get from him. Dan Skillings had a really disappointing year. And basically everyone was bad besides Day Thomas. So I have no idea. I've kind of decided that I'm not putting any stock into what I see from Cincinnati until the start of conference play, because it's 2 very different seasons, and it can go up and down and change so much in the matter of 2 weeks. If they end up beating Louisville, that's when I'll be like, okay, we might have a pretty good team on our hands. But the beating up of like non-conference like unranked opponents, they play Georgia and Clemson. They play Xavier and Dayton. I think those are 4 games that they should have a really good chance to win all of them. And then Louisville will be a tough one, because we've seen opposing fans come into Heritage Bank Center and take that thing over before. So I wouldn't be surprised if Louisville fans did it. So that's going to be a tough atmosphere. But, last year we saw them beat Georgia Tech by like 35 points in Atlanta. And then you're thinking this team is so, so, so good. And then it just goes straight downhill at the start of the Big 12 play. When I was looking at the schedule yesterday, it's kind of clear that they have 4 big home games. I think it's Baylor, Iowa State, Houston. I have it right here. Baylor, Iowa State, Houston, BYU. I think they have to win 2 out of 4 of those to be confident that they're going to make the tournament. You have to get those big quad one wins at home, and then you might have to steal 1 big road game. But the thing that they've struggled with is they haven't gotten those big wins in large part. They beat Texas Tech and BYU since they joined the Big 12. And they've also stumbled against the back half of the conference.
Right.
Like they've got those bad losses to West Virginia, Oklahoma State, and those kind of teams. So you've got to steal the big game, and you've got to take care of business when you can. This is kind of the best put together roster Wes Miller's had at Cincinnati, but that still right now is on paper. Losing Jalen Haynes is big. They have to get more creative with how they're going to score down low. So I have no idea how good they're going to be. And I don't think we'll know until the first 2 weeks of the Big 12 play in January.
Well, hopefully they lose a game in early December here in Cincinnati. Hopefully they lose an important game here in early December. I got one question before I let you go. You're a graduate of Indiana University, diehard Hoosier. Since you graduated, they turned into a football powerhouse. Do you feel personally responsible for the failure at football while you were at school there?
I feel like I sacrificed a ton and that I am partly responsible in what I had to watch on a weekly basis. The amount of press conferences that I went to where it was like a sad LEO at the end of all of them that Tom Allen would have to say because he just got beat by 35 points. I feel like a martyr, if I'm being honest. I mean, all these student reporters get to go to the college football playoff against Notre Dame and go to UCLA. And I had to go to West Lafayette and see them lose by 40 points. So I don't know. But when I was there for 2 years. They went to the tournament both years. So maybe it was me.
Yeah, good point. That's a good point.
But now they're a football school because they're paying their coach $12 million a year, which is crazy to think.
That is crazy.
So
I think they'll still love basketball in that state, regardless of how good that football team is. I think they'll still like basketball just a little bit more. One final question as an Indiana grad. I love asking this question to a few other Indiana grads that I've talked to. I've worked personally a few events. Part of my job here at Chatterbox is I got to work these events. I've worked personally the Little 500 3 consecutive years. Every time I talk to an Indiana grad about the Little 500, for those who don't know, it's a bike race that they have at the end of the year. Every Indiana grad that I've talked to ever, I say, hey, I'm working the Little 500. They'll go, oh, I love the Little 500. I never went, but I love it. Did you ever go to the Little 500, or did you just use it as an excuse to
not once
to forego your normal college studies and just party for an entire week?
Not once. I don't even remember where. I think I actually came home to meet my niece when she was born for the first one, and then the second one I went to a frat party.
Okay. It's the same sentiment every time. I'd be like, yeah, I'm working the Little 500. They'll go like, oh my God, I love the Little 500. Really? You been? Oh no, I never went. It's just a fun week. And I was like, fair enough. C'est la vie. Keegan, thank you so much for joining me here today. Glad to make you laugh a little bit. Put some things on that wall, please. It looks sad in that room.
Yeah.
But
do something.
Congratulations on the marriage. And my wife thinks you're wedding goers for the tips that night. I think she did pretty well that night. Well, I think
that's the best news I've gotten. That's awesome.
Yeah, good. See you, Keegan. See you, man.
See ya.
Keegan Nickerson on the beat for the Cincinnati Bearcats. Talked a lot of Bearcat football. Talked a little bit of Bearcat basketball. He's obviously an IU grad, and IU is churning out in college football. Kirk Cignetti. It's funny about Kirk Cignetti. It took exactly 2 years for people to warm up to his shtick, I feel like. Last year, he's I win, Google me, and all these Big Ten people, media goers are like, man, Kirk Cignetti, that guy's he's cocky, he's arrogant, this team isn't for real. And obviously, I mean, they make the college football playoff. They get blown out in pretty much every big game that they had to play last year. Well, then they come back this year, and they're a top 5 team in the country, and they look about as for real as pretty much any team in the country. And people are like, I'll tell you what, I think I kind of like this Kirk Cincinnati. Am I off in that opinion? Did it feel like it took? Do you feel like he's still not widely liked, the abrasiveness of him, or do you feel like people are warming up to it?
I think people are warming up to it because they realize how real his football team is. I think last year it was kind of a cute story. They were beating up on bad teams. I mean, the Notre Dame, the score of that game doesn't really indicate what exactly transpired. It was probably a closer score than what the game was, and then obviously struggled immensely against Ohio State. But make no mistake, this Indiana team, this is one of the best teams in the country. It's a top 5 offense. It's a top 5 defense. Got to have both this day and age in college football, and they can hang in there in the trenches, and that was the biggest thing that I didn't necessarily know before watching them a lot over the past few weeks. They got some big dudes in there. They move people, and this is absolutely a team that can win the national championship. And I think you said shtick, and maybe it is partially, but I think in some ways that's just who he is. That's just who he is, kind of as a person and as a coach. He's got a lot of confidence. He's won everywhere he's been, and now he's at Indiana, and what he's been able to do, resurrect this program. Took the contract. They gave him a raise there. He's in his 60s. He wants to end it here, and he believes that they can win and be national title contenders. And based on the product that he's put on the field this year, I totally believe him.
Yeah, it's cool. It's, as someone who doesn't partake in college football a whole lot, it's cool to see in this new era where it felt like the same teams. And I actually had this take earlier this week. The same people. I love all you guys that watch the show. The same people that tell me how tired you are of the Kansas City Chiefs, how trite the Chiefs winning all the time are the same ones that tell me how great college football is. And I could be in a 15-year coma and wake up and be like, hey, who's top 5 in the country right now? Nope, Alabama. Nope, Ohio State. Nope, seems like a lot has changed in college football, which 15 years ago, the Chiefs weren't anything. The Chiefs weren't so, they were a good team, but they weren't winning playoff games. It's kind of funny how things like that work. I'm a Kirk Cincinnati fan. I'm an Indiana basketball fan because my college roommate was a diehard Hoosier. Do you think the Bearcats have a legitimate shot at this Big 12? Do you think they have a legitimate shot to make the college football playoff? I asked Keegan this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say I was on board from the jump, but Baylor, they were a 4-3 team going in last week's game, but that's a real offense with a real quarterback in Sawyer Robertson, and I saw enough from the UC defense that shows me that they can hang in there. What they got offensively is incredible. They got guys that can actually win on the outside now, one-on-one matchups. They got a quarterback that's playing at a really high level. You could say he's the best quarterback in the Big 12. I think that's probably an accurate statement here at this point. No Pryor hurts. No Pryor's huge. We'll see. They've really been able to have kind of that, 2 horses back there with Pryor and Walker. Right. Now it's just going to be Walker for this Utah game. So interested to see what this run game looks like for Cincinnati. But prime time at Utah, look, there's not a ton of seats in there, but it gets loud. And, we're going to find out a lot about this team. Obviously, it's a 10-point spread for a reason. Vegas thinks clearly that Utah is going to win this game. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if UC hung around in there and had an opportunity in the fourth quarter. But no Pryor is massive, and we'll see how they adjust without him.
Yeah, we will see. No.
Do you have a super chat? Want me
we
to
have
read
a super chat. Yeah, let's get to that super chat.
Comes in from Ben Riley, and this came in during Keegan's interview, but I would imagine it's not UC, and it's about the Bengals. He says, our defense is soft. We need some guys from single-parent households with a lot of student loan debt on that side of the ball, in my honest opinion.
That's funny. That's a very specific. Are people from single-parent households and a lot of student loan debt? I think I'd fall into that category. I think I'd fall into that one. And I don't know if I would consider myself as a non-soft, as a hard-nosed guy. Hopefully some people would say that about me, but I don't know if I would. But, yeah, there's clearly the Bengals' defense and their missed tackling is an abomination. I don't know what else to say. It feels, I know you guys were hammering me on Monday and Tuesday for just continually talking about how bad this defense is, but it's disheartening to watch. And the worst part about it is, truly the worst part about this whole thing is it doesn't, you don't see how it gets better. You don't see the cavalry coming over the hill to save the day. The only thing you can hope for is that they just play better, which is a tough place to be in the world of sports where you're just like, got to play better, got to be better. Got to be a little tougher, which is why Craig Sandlin put me on this opinion, and it is that I've long said that I want an offensive guy here. If we fire Zac Taylor, I want an offensive guy here. I think I'm now on the side that we need a defensive guy because I trust Joe Burrow in this offense to work with pretty much anyone. Can we get a defensive guy in here that can kind of establish a hard-nosed mentality, which, by the way, the Bengals had not too long ago. The Bengals had that identity under Marvin Lewis. For 15 years, this team was a hard-nosed. It's part of the reason the AFC North got the reputation it did between the Ravens, Steelers, and Bengals, and that terrible team up north. This was a hard-nosed division. Obviously, we're not that anymore here in Cincinnati. Those Ravens and the Steelers kind of are still. Browns certainly are, but we are not. We're a pass-heavy, kind of a highfalutin West Coast-style team. So, yeah, we need to be a little tougher. It feels very similar to, if you want the college analogy, to where the Steelers and the Ravens feel like SEC Big 10, and we feel like a Big 12 team. Like we feel like we're going to score 50 points. We're going to pass the ball for 450 yards, and hopefully everything works out on the back end with the defensive side. You remember those Pac-12 teams with USC, the Caleb Williams team. Their linebackers are like 210 pounds. You're like, this is a major program, and their linebackers smaller than me. Are you kidding me? That's what it feels like. It feels like we're just a little soft. A little soft on the defensive side, but nothing you can't change. Nothing you can't change. Any final thoughts before we get into the Stone Shield show, Stone?
We'll talk about it on my show, but what Trey Savage did last night gave me chills. 22-year-old rookie, was in single-A ball this year.
Played in, I believe, 6 different levels of professional baseball this year.
Incredible. Against that lineup, Game 5 of the World Series, on the road, Ohtani, Freeman, Betts, Muncy, Smith, no problem. 12 Ks. And that splitter that's nasty.
Yeah, splitters. You ever had to face a splitter in your young baseball career?
I don't think so.
Most people younger don't throw that pitch.
I tried to throw it a little bit, but obviously, so when it works, it's great. When you get the chase, it's great, but it was hard for me to control. But it was a fun pitch to throw.
Yeah. When it was hard to catch. We had a guy that I caught in college that his splitter, and it looks just like a knuckleball that tumbles and it just falls off the face of the earth, and you're just like, man, didn't see that one. It is the one thing. I think it's very tired. I think it's very tired when people talk about the eras of baseball, where they're like, the worst player in Major League Baseball today would be a Hall of Famer if he played in 1910, which could be true, but I try to compare players amongst their peers, right? How good was Babe Ruth with the same circumstances, with the same training, with the same knowledge of the sport amongst his peers? Like, would Babe Ruth play in Major League Baseball? I mean, maybe if he grew up today and he had the same talent and he just grew up and played, that maybe he can do it. But if you take 30-year-old Babe Ruth and put him in the Major League Baseball right now, he wouldn't be able to compete. I don't think that belittles what Babe Ruth did because he was so much better than his peers. The point I'm trying to make is when I do think about those eras of baseball, there was 3 pitches. There was fastball, changeup, curveball. You can get some run on a fastball. Obviously, people's curveball shapes were a little different, but they didn't have to deal with sliders. They didn't have to deal with splitters. I mean, I think they had knuckleballs. They had knuckleballs back then, too. And then there would people be putting bottle caps in their gloves, scrape up the ball so it flies differently, and, hawking a loogie on the thing, having spitballs and all that stuff. So there were different bits, but they really just, it was fastball, changeup, curveball. They didn't have sliders, didn't have splitters, all these things that are taking the world by storm today. Stone Shield Show coming up. I'll be back tomorrow. Thank you guys so much for being here. Love you all. Off the bench, Stone Shield Show coming up.
Here we go, here on a Thursday. It is the Stone Shield Show. My name is Stone Shields. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us here this morning. Back at our usual time slot here, 11 to noon at our special 2-hour edition of the show yesterday. Reed Mouse was out. It was great to have him back today. He'll be back tomorrow for Friday's edition of Off the Bench. If you missed any of our show yesterday, a lot of it still applies. It's still very timely, as we had a couple of great guests on. Paul Fritchner, the great work he's doing at the Rebound Rundown. That podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts. He has a YouTube page there as well. The interview with Paul is up on the channel right now. It's also available in podcast form. Don't want to miss that. Check that out, especially if you are a Cincinnati college basketball fan. And by Cincinnati, I mean Cincinnati and Xavier as well. New era at Xavier. Richard Pitino coming in year one, replacing Sean Miller. Lots of turnovers, or lots of turnover, I should say, as it relates to the roster. Lots of unknown, lots of portal guys coming in. All your dudes from last year gone. And this day and age of college football with the transfer portal, NIL, this is becoming more and more common. But you add a coach leaving on top of it, and you're looking at a totally different basketball team for Xavier. Lots of questions. Really, I mean, you could tell me that this team's going to come in last in the Big East, I would say okay, and you could tell me that this team's going to hang in there and kind of be right on that outside edge, not at the level of, St. John or UConn or even Creighton, but right below that. I mean, there is a wide margin of what this team could look like in the Big East this year. That's very exciting. Paul did a tremendous job. I was talking to Paul after the show. We're going to get him on as often as we can. He's very busy man throughout the college basketball season, but any opportunity we can potentially get Paul on the show, we are obviously going to do that. Craig Sandlin also on the show yesterday. That interview will actually go out later today on the YouTube page. We had to get to Oxford quickly yesterday after the show, do some Miami women's soccer as they took a victory 1-0 over Kent State. Huge game, huge match for the Miami women's soccer team. They secured, with the loss of Buffalo as well at the MAC women's soccer level, they secured a first-round bye in the MAC tournament. So congrats to Coach Sermons. Great work she's done this year as they get a bye. And this is the best Miami women's soccer team we've seen in several years now. So we'll see how their run continues, but a big win on the pitch yesterday for them. But that's why we didn't get a ton of videos out yesterday on the channel. Be on the lookout for Craig's interview. And Craig and Reed, of course, did a video on the Joe Flacco, the injury news yesterday. That went out last night on the channel. Check that out. We're going to be spending time talking about that on today's show there as well. And we talked about early in the week, everybody's down the dumps about the Jets loss and kind of ripping the organization. That's fine, and that's all, deserved, obviously, for the Cincinnati Bengals. But something not a lot of people were talking about is the fact that Joe Flacco might not be able to go. Zac Taylor, his press conference, some concerning remarks, to say the least, and we'll see about his availability throughout the rest of this week. Did not practice on Wednesday. We'll talk about that. Some trade rumors. Paul Daner, fantastic job covering the Cincinnati Bengals. Going to try to get him on the show as soon as possible for The Athletic. He had an article that went out talking about Trey Hendrickson trade rumors. His thoughts on that very much align with mine. And also Logan Wilson, Cam Taylor-Britt, and a couple of your former third-round picks, Jermaine Burton and McKinley Jackson. We'll talk about that on the show as well. Thursday night football tonight on Amazon Prime, and it's a matchup between two teams with 2 wins, but I'm actually very intrigued and really looking forward to this matchup tonight. Again, 2 2-win teams. The Ravens, you can sit there and, say whatever you want about Baltimore, and I know people are sitting there saying, they're still going to win the AFC North, and, they're the betting favorite to win the AFC North still here at this point. But if you lose this game and you fall to Miami, they're not winning the North. I can assure you of that. So if they're going to go, they got to go now. But this Miami team, turmoil, right? All the controversy coming into the year, Mike McDaniel, leadership issues, Tua going to the podium, just spewing utter nonsense and just idiotic things to say in front of the local media that obviously ends up being a national story. But a big win for them against a good Atlanta defense last week. Say what you want about Atlanta offensively, but that's a really good defense, and they went up and down the field on them. So we'll preview that game. We'll talk about that game. 7.5-point spread in favor of Baltimore. World Series, Game 5 last night, and I said it on Off the Bench with Trey Savage. Did in the game last night, literally gave me chills, gave me goosebumps up and down my arm. 22-year-old right, has been all over the place this year as a rookie. Was in single-A ball to start the year, climbs his way up, and yeah, you're the Game 1 starter in the World Series and the Game 5 starter against the Los Angeles Dodgers. Ohtani, Betts, Freeman, Muncy, Smith. The list goes on and on and on, and he gave it to him. He shoved in the game 12 Ks, the splitter, the slider. It's the guy that's only throwing 93, I think, is what he's topping out at. The splitter was there. The slider was there. Just nasty stuff from your Savage. And the Blue Jays, who we predicted were going to win the World Series, they're going to have two opportunities here to potentially close this thing out at home, by the way. Rogers Center for Game 6 should be awesome in that game. But Yamamoto going to take the hill for Los Angeles, and he's been nails all postseason long. We'll talk about the World Series. Also, there's a point I want to make about the Minnesota Vikings. They're a team that, won 14 games last year. They had a competent quarterback, or I would say a good quarterback, in Sam Darnold, and they opted to let him walk in free agency. They let the Seattle Seahawks outbid him, and I think this is something that they're going to be kicking themselves for several years. We'll talk about that. Also, if we have time, Ohio State, Penn State. Going into the year, it's kind of like, oh my goodness, this is going to be a huge game. There were some people, not us, some people that said this could be 1 versus 2 in the country. Well, yeah, Penn State's lost 4 straight games. Still a lot of talent on that roster. It's at noon on Saturday. Is Ohio State on potential upset alert? We'll talk about that game a little bit if we have time to end today's show. And then, obviously, we'll have our full college football preview tomorrow. Great slate of games. As always, Texas-Vandy, a good game that I'm really looking forward to. Oklahoma-Tennessee, another good one. And we'll see if Penn State can make this a game with Ohio State. But if we have time, we'll talk about that on today's show there as well. Let's start, as we always do, with the Cincinnati Bengals. Let's start, of course, with Joe Flacco and his injury status here at this point. Let's just run through the injury report really quickly. Wednesday, going into Thursday, Bengals obviously practiced today. The weather is awful here in Hamilton, Ohio. I would assume it's just as bad downtown in Cincinnati, but we'll see if they're outside in the bubble, whatever it is. But I would assume they're going to be outside because the Bengals, of course, play the Bears at home on Sunday. Dylan Fairchild has the knee. Look, hand up. I thought it would probably be a mistake to go back to him because you found something there in the Pittsburgh game. They went back to him, and he was solid, and he certainly gave you an opportunity to win the game against the Jets. He was a full go, still in the injury report with the knee. Flacco, we'll talk about him more in a second, did not practice. Shoulder injury. Henderson didn't go, has the hip. Unfortunately, it feels like this is something that they're going to be dealing with, and he's going to be dealing with throughout the duration of this season. We'll talk about the trade rumors here in a second there as well. Cedric Johnson has been back. He could have went last week. He did not. Full practice, has the calf. Dalton Risner sick. He did not practice. Certainly noteworthy. We'll see what they do at that guard spot. They went with Rivers and Fairchild. Obviously, the 2 rookies last week worked out. Risner showed you some good stuff there in the Thursday night game against Pittsburgh. Didn't practice with the illness. Cam Sample has a knee. He's been dreadful this year. He was a full go. Logan Wilson did not go with a calf injury. Marco Wilson also has been banged up. He did not go. Hamstring injury. Now, you look at the Chicago side of things, and this is where there's some optimism. If you're the Cincinnati Bengals, they could use a break, and they might get one as it relates to the injury status of lots of key members of the Chicago Bears, particularly on the offensive side. They're best receivers. I think their top 4 receivers here, as I'm looking at this, their top 4 receivers did not go. Luther Burden III, concussion protocol, didn't go. DJ Moore, they're 1. He didn't go. He's got a hip groin issue going on there as well. Odunze's got a heel. He's developed a great rapport with Caleb Williams. He didn't go either. So those are their 3 top guys. DeAndre Swift, their running back, he didn't go. And Roshan Johnson, their other running back, he didn't go there as well. Komet, he was limited with a back injury. A couple of guys in their secondary beat up there as well. And I think the general consensus here going into this game early in the week when you're not really sure about all the injuries the injury for Joe Flacco is it's probably going to be a shootout, right? I mean, the back end of that Chicago defense, no good. The Bengals obviously have been able to move the ball and score points rapidly in recent weeks, and the Bengals defense obviously has stunk there as well. So it kind of felt like it was going to be a shootout. But the question and the concern now, obviously, for Cincinnati is Joe Flacco. And is he going to go? And as I mentioned at the top of this show, you're down in the dumps, you're mad, you're angry about the Jets loss, and nobody's really talking about, is Flacco going to be okay here to play this game against the Chicago Bears? Make no mistake, it's a must-win game. We talk about must-win games all the time. This is a must-win game. If you lose this game, you are not going to the postseason. Not saying you're going if you win, but you still have an opportunity to, gain some positive momentum going into the bye and continue to build off that. They have to win this game. And Joe Flacco, it's a sprained AC joint in his right shoulder. I've never had that injury, but I've been doing some reading over the past 24 hours or so about people that have had this injury, and it is incredibly painful. And this isn't his left shoulder. This is his right shoulder. That's the moneymaker. That's what he uses to throw the football and push it down the football field. And he's a tough guy. Joe Flacco has always been just so tough. And, reminds you of Big Ben in a lot of ways. Obviously a huge guy. He's takes some hits, and he'll play through anything. And he did that throughout his entire career in Baltimore, and he's still going to do that here at 40 years of age. I'm sure they're going to, convene with the doctors. If it's up to Flacco, he's going to go out there and play. And Zac Taylor's remarks at his press conference yesterday wouldn't necessarily say it was intriguing. And I think it kind of sounded the alarm for a lot of people in the fan base of, this is a real possibility that he could not be active for this game. He commended Joe Flacco for wanting to be out there, obviously, and said it was just gritty and super tough of him to do this. And he did make an interesting point, and his point was that, look, Flacco hasn't been here long at all. This isn't like Joe Burrow not practicing throughout the week and then you feel good about him going out there on Sunday. This is a guy that's still learning the offense. He's still very new here. Do you feel comfortable about him potentially not practicing throughout the week and then going out there on Sunday and being a better option than Jake Browning? It's an interesting point from Zac Taylor, but I'll be very clear here, and I said this on Off the Bench, no disrespect towards Jake Browning, but if Joe Flacco can throw the ball 20 yards, roll him out there and let him be the guy, right? Because, you just feel better. I mean, you have to, right? I mean, look what this offense has done with Joe Flacco, and look what they did with Jake Browning. Just a complete 180, not even close. Confidence, the timing, the rhythm that Flacco is playing with, all those things, even if he's injured, will continue. Now, the accuracy, of course, is something that could waver. The downfield shots, maybe that is no longer a possibility with this injury. But if he can go out there and just, what's he doing? He's controlling the offense. He's managing the game. People like to say game manager like that's a knock on somebody. I've never understood that. That's the job of the quarterback, is to manage the game, take care of the football, move the chains. That's what Joe Flacco's doing. That's what he's doing at an elite level. And if he can go out there and that arm even has a little bit of life into it, and if he can, they can shoot him up before the game, make sure he's ready to go out there and battle through the pain. If he's in that kind of a spot, he absolutely should go out there and play this game. And we'll see, what his status is going to be. I would say he's not going to practice today. Like, it would surprise me if he practices here on a Thursday. That news will be out sooner rather than later. But it's interesting. It's very, very interesting because the whole mindset of this game and the game plan, in my opinion, like if you roll Jake Browning out there, is totally, totally different. Because if you roll Jake Browning out there, he has to be ultra conservative. Right? Because if he turns the football over at a rapid pace like he did when he was the starter for several weeks, you're going to lose. But then when you play ultra-conservative, that doesn't always equate to a lot of first downs. Maybe you're punting the football a lot. And with this defense, Bears probably going to find ways to score points. That obviously is not a recipe for success. So that's something that we're going to continue to monitor. My guess, if you're tell me right now as we're doing this live, 11:15 on a Thursday, I think he will be a game-time decision, and I think he will try to give it a go in this game. That's just my guess. And then you have an opportunity with the bye week to potentially get a little bit healthier. Again, I'm not a doctor. I don't know how long these things linger, how long they last, but I don't really think this is something that is lingering. I think this is something that hurts, and hurts really bad, and is really, really painful. And we'll see if he's able to, fight through it and be available for his team out there on Sunday. No one questioning the toughness of Joe Flacco. Again, Zac Taylor said he wants to play. He's adamant that he wants to play and try to give it a go. Maybe the doctors will protect him a little bit, but this is do or die, right? This isn't like, oh, yeah, we'll protect you here and then bring you back for after the bye. It's like, well, if you don't play this game and we lose, there is really no after the bye. Obviously, there's games that you have to play and livelihoods and whatnot that's still on the line. But your season, for all intents and purposes, when it relates to trying to make the postseason and get Joe Burrow back, is pretty much dead. So if you can go out there and even have a little bit of life in that arm, I think he's going to be a better option than Jake Browning. And I think that's something that certainly is very noteworthy. And we'll see. I wouldn't expect a decision anytime soon. Again, my gut says game time decision. Then he'll go out there and try to go. They're giving Browning lots of reps in practice. And is there a possibility that if they go to Browning, the 2 weeks off kind of helped him out? He could recollect his thoughts, get a little bit healthier, and then go out there and maybe execute, learn from Flacco. I don't know, right? Not a lot of people have confidence in that, given what he put out on the football field over the course of the few games that he was the starter. But hopefully that's something that we're not dealing with here at this point, because it's a 2.5-point spread. But if it's not Joe Flacco and it's Jake Browning, to me it's like 6.5, 7-point spread, to be completely honest with you. But very noteworthy injury the Bengals obviously are monitoring, and we all are very, very closely. The other one, of course, is Trey Hendrickson. Paul Dehner Jr. obviously does a terrific job covering the Cincinnati Bengals for The Athletic. He had some stats, and I've been saying this, for a long time this year, and I didn't really have the numbers to back it up. But just from the eye test, everyone says, oh, this defense stinks. Obviously, it does. That's the case. We all know that. We all understand that. But when Trey Hendrickson has not been out on the field, it's been even significantly worse, which is really hard to wrap your head around. And we sat here and theorized this offseason, like, well, if you let Trey Hendrickson go, you trade him. Could it really be that much worse without him? It was already awful last year. Could it be that much worse? Well, the answer is yes. It could be a heck of a lot worse, and you're seeing that this year in the games that he wasn't able to play, right? Second half against Green Bay, your defense completely falls apart, can't get a stop. Now, on the road, I would argue Green Bay is one of the best teams in the league. That's fine, right? But then Pittsburgh, right? A team that, Aaron Rodgers is playing at a high level right now and is doing a good job running the offense, but not stopping them whatsoever, serious issue. Second half against the Jets and Justin Fields. Can't get a stop. No Trey Hendrickson. So here's some of the numbers here from Paul Dehner Jr. for when Trey Hendrickson is on the field this year and off the field this year. Yards per play, 5.7 you're giving up with him on the field, 6.8 with him off. More than a full yard of difference. Yards per attempt, 7.3 when he's on, 8.5 when he is off. Yards per rush. And Trey Hendrickson, of course, is not a run stopper by any stretch of the imagination. There's a lot of people that kind of riddle him useless as it relates to the run game. Well, the numbers would not suggest that. On the field, 4 yards per rush. Off the field, 5.8 yards per rush. And then this is the big one, obviously. Trey Hendrickson, a pass rusher. Opposing quarterbacks passer rating, 85.3 when he's on the field. 127.8 when he is off the field. So the numbers just completely jump out at you. This defense is bad, but they are significantly somehow even worse when Trey Hendrickson is not out on the football field. And we'll see if he's able to go this week against the Chicago Bears. But that kind of ties into my next point. Obviously, the trade deadline, November 4th, I believe, coming up. That's really only a few days away, and we'll see how the Bengals opt to handle things at the deadline. We've kind of gone back and forth on should they trade for a piece, should they not? Should they trade away a guy for some picks? You, of course, lost a draft pick. You lost your 5th rounder for the Joe Flacco trade, but you got another 6th rounder. There's decisions, obviously, to make for the Cincinnati Bengals, but Paul Dehner Jr. also came out there and said there's no way that the Cincinnati Bengals are trading Trey Hendrickson. And you can go back to the history of the franchise. I understand they've broke some tendencies here of late, right? The trade for Joe Flacco. But that was kind of like you had to. There was no choice. As much as you love your draft picks and want to hold on to them and, trust your draft picks, trust the guys you have on your roster, you had to make a move there for Joe Flacco. So they did that. And then last year they had some depth issues at running back, and they felt the need to go out and get Khalil Herbert with the trade in the 7th round. But trading a top-of-the-line player is not something that Cincinnati does. Now, I understand Trey Hendrickson made a mess of things this offseason and, was very adamant, banging the table. If you're not going to pay me, trade me, right? He said that several times throughout the offseason, a drama-filled offseason, per usual. Obviously for Trey Hendrickson. But when you look at the history of this franchise, there's only been, 2 trades when you have guys that are really good football players. And it was Carson Palmer and Carlos Dunlap, right? And those guys just made a complete mess, right? They basically were like, you have to trade me. And they made things really, really ugly for the Cincinnati Bengals. And honestly, the Cincinnati Bengals weren't left with much of a choice. They had to kind of move off those guys. Trey Hendrickson's not doing that here during the season. He was paid. He got his raise, $30 million, right? He's happy, right? And he's, hurt, obviously, here at this point. And there's people that sit there, and there's teams. The Niners, of course, has been one. The Eagles, the Colts, those seem to be the big 3 where guys in the media are sitting there saying, it'd be a great fit, for this defense to plug in Trey Hendrickson. That's totally fine. But here at this stage, again, the Bengals wouldn't be able to get as much for him now as they would have prior to the season. One, because they don't have much leverage, because people understand they're kind of looking at Cincinnati's season, especially if you lose the Chicago game. It's like, well, you're cooked. You don't really have much leverage here. And I just don't anticipate Cincinnati making a move, regardless of the offers they get. They couldn't get a first-rounder this offseason. I think if they would have gotten a first-rounder, they would have moved off him, but teams were hesitant. Why? Because he's 30 years of age. You had to give up a first-rounder, and then you had to pay him on top of that, and nobody in the NFL wanted to do it. So if you couldn't get a first-rounder for him this offseason before he was even hurt and was still the guy coming off back-to-back years of 17.5 sacks, then you're not going to get a first round for him here at the deadline. It's just simply not going to happen. If you get rid of him for anything less than that, I mean, maybe you could argue a second rounder, but are you even going to get a second rounder here from at this point? I think that remains to be seen. But the Bengals they're not going to quit on the season. It's not something this franchise does. They're not, overly aggressive or savvy when it comes to doing stuff like this. So the Bengals, they're not going to trade Trey Hendrickson. Shoot, we could sit here and talk about it a few more days here on the show, do a couple more videos about it, because people all around the country are talking about it. So it's completely fine to do that. But just me to you, it ain't happening. They ain't moving off Trey Hendrickson. And then the Logan Wilson thing is interesting. Wilson, of course, requested a trade. Oh, yeah, the captain, like one of your leaders of your team, yeah, he requested a trade. Oh, that's good. That's good luck. ESPN, we talked about the article. They dropped it, I believe, like 2 weeks ago, a couple of days before the Logan Wilson trade request. And the article said 60%, according to ESPN, that the Bengals trade Logan Wilson. And to me, I was just like, I don't get it, right? I mean, you're going with the two rookies right here. And look, it's the NFL. It's defensive players. It's linebackers. These guys get banged up. They get hurt. Obviously, hopefully, nothing happens to those players. But is it realistic to assume that Demetrius Knight Jr. and Barrett Carter are going to be super healthy throughout the duration of the year and not miss any time? No. All right, I think you could use some depth behind them. You could use some leadership behind them. You could use some tutelage behind them, just, under Logan putting him under his wing, saying, hey, this is how we need to do things. This is how we, operate in these team meetings, these position meetings. This is how we, go about our day-to-day. And I think all that stuff is very, very valuable. And just to move off him, I get he requested a trade, but what could you get for Logan Wilson? Now, there's some teams here that could use Logan Wilson. Shoot, I think the Indianapolis Colts, and I get it. Lou Anarumo, former Bengal guy, it just makes sense to say, oh, trade him to Indianapolis with Lou. I get it. But I think really when you look at the Colts, I mean, they're a Super Bowl contender right now. As weird as that is to say out loud, it's just the reality of the situation, and they could use some help at linebacker. But what could you get for Logan Wilson, right? A day 3 pick, right? And you had to work out how you would, handle the contract there as well. The Bengals recently gave him an extension. That would be something difficult you have to work through. So it would surprise me if you traded Logan Wilson. And CTB, I kind of put him in that same spot there as well. Obviously, what he has done this year has not been good enough. Same with last year. Benched repeatedly. Maturity questions, leadership questions, discipline issues, tackling issues, coverage issues as well. I mean, the list goes on and on for Cam Taylor-Britt. But again, he's like your third corner right now. We speculated that could it be Josh Newton. Well, Cam Taylor-Britt, all the turmoil that he's gone through, all the issues that he's had, I mean, this coaching staff still believes in him more than they do Josh Newton. At least that's what they're kind of showing us here at this point. So to move off him, again, DBs, somebody's going to get banged up. Somebody's going to get hurt. It's also what makes this Bengals, season so frustrating. Yeah, they've gotten really hurt with the Joe Burrow injury and the Trey Hendrickson injury, but beyond that, they've been pretty healthy. Obviously, Gesicki out as well. But when you look at the rest of the league, there's a lot of teams that are really, really beat up. And the Bengals defensively, apart from Trey Hendrickson, they have all their guys. Their guys just simply aren't good enough, obviously, at playing defensive football. But I would probably hang on to Cam Taylor-Britt, and then you obviously move off him after this year. There's no way that CTB should be back in stripes next season. Shouldn't happen. And, unfortunately, Logan Wilson, I don't think should be back either. But as far as getting rid of them at the deadline for a day 3 pick, to me, that doesn't do much for you. It doesn't do much for you. They have more value here as veterans, believe it or not, even though they've struggled immensely, than getting a day 3 pick back. Now, the two that are interesting, two former third round picks, Jermaine Burton and McKinley Jackson. And McKinley Jackson has not even – he's played 5 snaps this year, and they haven't asked him to do much. He's been a healthy scratch, and there hasn't been really any off-the-field issues with him. It's just I guess this guy isn't very good. And that seems to be kind of the consensus here at this point, which you took him in the 3rd round. That appears to be a massive swing and a massive miss. I mean, they're not even giving him an opportunity, and they stink along their defensive line. And they stink so bad, they're like, we're not even going to try this guy because we have no faith in him. So it appears to be just a swing and a miss there from McKinley Jackson. Could you move him? But, what are you going to get back from him? Is somebody even going to give up a day 3 pick for him? He's done absolutely nothing in the NFL to this point. All he's got going for him is that the Bengals took him in the 3rd round. He played SEC football, was pretty good at A&M, but hasn't done anything in the National Football League. Burton, on the other hand, maybe somebody takes a flyer on Jermaine Burton because the talent has been there, right? Obviously, the off-the-field issues, the evictions, the work ethic problems, showing up late to meetings, falling asleep in meetings, just inexcusable stuff from Jermaine Burton. And all accounts and all reports this offseason were that, Burton's in a good spot. He's doing the right things. He's acting more like a professional. And you're going to see Jermaine Burton potentially develop into the wide receiver 3 and take that spot away from Yoshi. And then Tinsley burst on the scene, and Burton's back to being a scratch. So that's very interesting to me. I mean, again, the talent is there, the speed's there, the physicality is there, and he can't even dress? That's just tough. That's tough. Because you can't sit there and tell me, and I like Mitchell Tinsley a lot, and I hope he's a receiver on this team for several years, and I hope he gets to work with Joe Burrow, but you can't sit there and tell me he's more talented than Jermaine Burton. He's just not. So is Burton still making dumb mistakes and not doing good things as a teammate and as a professional? I don't know. But I think maybe you could get something back for a Burton trade if somebody's got banged up there and they want to take a flyer on him. I think Burton has the talent, but it just seems like he's not a good person. He's not a good teammate. And he's not a professional. He's unprofessional, and those things are kind of working against him. But as it relates to Cincinnati Bengals and trades, I mentioned being okay with moving off CTB, but it's like, dude, I mean, all your DBs, I mean, they stink, and it's like if somebody gets hurt, who are you going to put out there? Probably not going to get much back for him. Wouldn't trade Logan. They're not going to trade Trey. But those 2 former 3rd rounders, McKinley Jackson and Jermaine Burton, I mean, they're healthy scratches for you, and they're not helping this team whatsoever. And that's, look, the 3rd round, I get it's not the 1st round. I get it's not the 2nd round. But, I mean, there's a lot of elite 3rd round picks in this league, and those guys just aren't even close. They can't even dress, and they're healthy, and they can't even dress. And as far as we know, McKinley Jackson doesn't even have any leadership issues, professional issues, off the field issues. He just isn't good. And that obviously is a massive, massive concern for this football team. So we'll continue to monitor the Bengals as the deadline approaches and things of that nature, and we'll see in terms of the decisions that they make. But my gut says it's going to be pretty boring. They're going to just kind of sit here and stand pat. They're going to hope they can pull off a win here against Chicago. If they do, their season is very much alive, despite what happened against the Jets last week. And, I'm looking forward to seeing the game. And hopefully seeing Joe Flacco out there. But it's like, Jake Browning goes out there. You just can't convince me that this team's going to win with Jake Browning out there. And even with Joe Flacco, it's like, well, he's not going to be able to push the ball down the field, right? He's not going to have, that zip on his passes, which I think you got the receivers and the playmakers and the issues that the Bears have in their secondary where you can still overcome that. You have some semblance of a run game here, which obviously has been positive over the course of the past few weeks. Chicago not, necessarily a world beater when it comes to stopping the run. So I think you're going to have some opportunities there, but yeah, it's just the quarterback position is so incredibly valuable. I feel so much better about a Joe Flacco at 30% than I do with a Jake Browning at 100%. That's harsh, but that's just the reality of the situation that we currently find ourselves in. So we'll see. We'll continue to monitor all those injuries. Massive game, 2.5. I think it opened at 1.5. Now it's at 2.5. At home in Cincinnati, line still favors the Bears. And if you got the Bears at 1.5 and then it ends up being Jake Browning, you're licking your chops, honestly, if you're a Bears bettor. In that situation. Thursday night football. Matchup of two-win teams, the Ravens and the Dolphins. And I'm very excited about this game, to be completely honest with you, which is kind of weird considering that both these teams only have 2 wins. But, I think there's a lot on the line here for this team. And I mentioned this at the top. If the Baltimore Ravens lose this game, I know there's a lot of people out there nationally that are saying, the Ravens, they're the favorites to win the division here at this point, and Baltimore's going to come back, and they're going to be a playoff team, and they're going to go on some kind of crazy run. I haven't seen a 2-5 team get as much love as this Ravens team has and for no good reason. Like, how many times have they gotten blown out this year? How many times have they given up 30-plus points and looking just totally incompetent on defense? I understand the past couple of weeks have been better for Baltimore on the defensive side. They've gotten a little bit healthier. Kyle Hamilton, of course, has returned to action. But, I mean, they're 2-5, and it's like they're the betting favorite in Vegas. Vegas is pretty much always right, so that tells you a lot right there. But there's people like, yeah, Ravens will be fine. Ravens will be fine. I mean, shoot, if the Chiefs were 2-5, I don't even know if people would be saying the Chiefs are fine. But for whatever reason, people think the Baltimore Ravens are going to be fine. Now, they play the Miami Dolphins. It's in South Beach. Lamar going back home to his home state. Lamar, of course, has missed the past 3 weeks with a hamstring injury. Going to be very important to see how he can move around with that hamstring injury. Now, I will say this. Lamar, at this stage of his career, if this is early in Lamar's career and he's got a hamstring injury, you go, oh, he's not the same player. Take the other team. They might lose this game. But at this stage of his career and his ability to be a pocket guy, I mean, Lamar, what he's been able to do and transition himself into a truly great NFL quarterback and find that ability to operate within the pocket and be an elite passer. Reality of the situation, Lamar Jackson's an elite passer. Now, and what he's been able to do, and it shows you how hard he works and just how bad he wants it and the coaching and the structure that he has around him. But I'm not worried if he can't run and make those crazy plays. That's fine. Lamar Jackson in the pocket's a really, really good quarterback. So really interested to see exactly how mobile. Obviously, that opens up a whole another dynamic when he's out there running him around making crazy plays. But at some point, Lamar's not going to be able to do that as he continues to age a little bit here. He's got plenty of more years where he can still run around and play at an MVP level. I'm not saying that, but it's a guy that's had some injury issues, and certainly having them here this year, and the Ravens were finally able to win a game without him against Chicago with Snoop Huntley, and we'll see if that can continue here in this game against Miami. Again, Lamar from Florida going back home has been tremendous against the Dolphins throughout his career, but that's a big number, 7.5, and look, this isn't one of the best bets of the weekend, but I'm leaning towards the plus 7.5 here in this matchup. Home game. McDaniel coaching for his job. Shoot, is Tua playing for his job a little bit? Looked like, he got benched a couple of weeks ago against Cleveland. And it's like, well, is Tua going to start? And then he had the eye thing. It's like he's sick, and he's got this swollen eye thing. And then he goes up there and has the best game of the season. Incredibly efficient. And 4 touchdowns in the game against Atlanta, which Atlanta, they should be better than they are. They've got some, I don't believe in Morris, to be completely honest with you. And you hear other coaches around the league, they speak so highly of Raheem Morris, but I just haven't seen it, to be completely honest with you. But that defense is really, really good for the Atlanta Falcons. It looks like they've hit on a lot of draft picks along their defensive line. They can cover on the back end. They've got some, safeties, obviously, that can make tackles. That's a really good defense, and the Dolphins had no issues moving the football up and down the field against them. And, again, this is a Ravens defense. Yeah, they've played better in recent weeks, but they've really struggled immensely throughout much of the season here to this point. So I'm really interested to watch this game. I think, the reason why Mike McDaniel got this job was because his expertise in the run game, right? Obviously in San Francisco, and that's been something that's kind of been an issue. And you're seeing them kind of go away from the zone run stuff and more of the gap run stuff, and they've had a lot of success doing that. They got several guys back there kind of rotate a stable of backs, and if you give Tua a run game, he can be a really effective quarterback. He's hitting the back foot. He's getting the ball out quickly. Tua had made some mistakes while he was struggling, made a ton of mistakes against Cleveland. That was kind of the one thing about Tua coming out all the way back to his Alabama days. It's like, does he have the biggest arm in the world? No, but he's not going to make a ton of mistakes. And when you have a guy like that starts making mistakes, he looks like a really bad quarterback. And that was kind of the case there for Tua for several weeks. Had a really good game last week, and I'm kind of expecting him to play well in this game there as well. So I think the Ravens probably win, but I think 7.5, to be honest with you, is the side. I think the Dolphins are going to score some points. I think they're going to do a nice job moving the football. But I think the question is Lamar and the Ravens just going to absolutely light up that Miami defense, right? Because that's kind of the Dolphins' defense has been a weak point of their team throughout the entirety of this year. They've had some injury issues there along their defense, and we'll see. These guys are coaching for their jobs, they're playing for their jobs, and I'm really interested to see what Lamar looks like in this game and what Derrick Henry looks like in this game there as well. Because the Ravens, and recently, even when Lamar has been out, they find themselves getting blasted immediately, and you kind of have to abandon Derrick Henry in the run game, and people can kind of sell out, load the box, and stop the run. And Derrick Henry hasn't really had a good season at all here at this point. And I think that's largely impacted by the fact that Lamar Jackson hasn't been out there playing the quarterback position for 3 weeks. But make no mistake, this is a team that even with Lamar out there at the beginning of the season was struggling immensely. And we'll see if they're able to kind of overcome that here at this point. There was a story that made some headlines as it related to the Baltimore Ravens. They had the ping pong tables in the locker room, and here in Cincinnati, the Bengals have done that in the past. I'm not quite sure if they have them out or not, but it was kind of a story in Cincinnati when they took the ping pong tables out. That was something they did, but obviously with the Ravens, Lamar Jackson, more of a team that's covered nationally, it was some big story that the Ravens they took away their ping pong tables in their locker room, and for whatever reason, everybody was talking about it. And then the story came out that Lamar was like, "Yeah, that was me. That was me. We have to be, a lot more locked in here at this point." And they struggled really early in the year. Obviously, we're losing games, and that's not something Lamar is accustomed to. So, I think it's much to be made about nothing, right? The stuff about the ping pong tables, but it does show you the type of leader that Lamar Jackson is, and he is an incredible leader, and he wants it so bad. Some of these guys, and it doesn't really happen for the top players in the league, but you have some of these players where it's like, Do they really want to win a world championship? Are they putting everything they have in their mind, body, and soul to go out there and do it? And a lot of people, the answer to that question is no, right? It's they're kind of, I don't know, just say collecting a check. They're playing a game they love in front of millions of people. Obviously, there's a lot that comes with that. But as far as putting everything on the line to pursue a world championship, I don't think there's a ton of players that you can necessarily say do that in the National Football League. Lamar Jackson is one of those players. And look, obviously here in Cincinnati, we hope it never happens. But the Ravens and Lamar, they're going to win a Super Bowl at some point if he can stay healthy. And I think, despite his play style, I think he can still actually age well, which is probably a hot take, because I'm really impressed with what he can do from the pocket. And I think you'll see him still be able to be an effective quarterback when he gets into like his mid-30s. Believe it or not, I do believe that he is going to be able to do that. Now, we'll see. But I think they're still going to have an open window here. Burrow famously said the window is his whole career. And I totally believe him when he says that, and I think that is an accurate statement. And, with Lamar, I think it's pretty similar. Burrow obviously, isn't as reliant on moving around. Lamar certainly is, but it feels like only a matter of time before they figure it out. But, they've had a lot of opportunities. There's some people out there, did the window close? I mean, they had some really, really good teams over the course of the past few years, and if you have those kinds of opportunities, you're the 1 seed, right, in the playoffs, and you don't capitalize and you don't turn it into a world championship and you can't even turn it into a victory in the AFC championship game, sometimes it shuts on you. And I think that's kind of something that Baltimore's dealing with a little bit right now. And I think to some degree you could say Buffalo's dealing with that a little bit too. I think Buffalo certainly will still be in the mix and be a threat with Josh Allen, but are they as good this year as they have been in recent years? Absolutely not. They've got all kinds of issues running the football. They've got all kinds of issues on the defensive side when you're talking about Buffalo. And, it kind of feels like the Buffalo from like 4 years ago. Back again now where it's like, well, it's just Josh Allen and they rely on him to be Superman. Kind of feels like that's a little bit of the case there as well. The Ravens are going to have to, start paying some more guys, right? And they're going to have to continue to draft and develop, which I think they will. Coaching, we'll see about Harbaugh. It'd be a mistake to part ways with him. He's won before. It's been a while, right? You're starting to look at guys in the AFC North like Tomlin and Harbaugh where it's like, these guys are revered as two of the best coaches in the NFL, but they haven't really, where's the, Super Bowl appearances here recently? I get both guys have won Super Bowls, but, and it's very, very hard to do that here in this league. I'm not saying it isn't, but I don't know. It's been a while since they've been really, truly dominant, and, I think that's kind of one of the biggest talking points here going into the 2026 offseason is, do you have a change in Pittsburgh with Mike Tomlin? Do you have a change in Baltimore with John Harbaugh? And those things remain to be seen. But I think McDaniel as a football mind is brilliant. The stuff he does in the run game is tremendous. Mind you, this has been a team offensively for the Miami Dolphins that a couple of years ago led the league in offense. Like, they can do offense in Miami. Mike McDaniel can do offense in Miami. It's just that, you hear the stories coming out. You had the player-only meeting like immediately, right? You had the stories coming out in OTAs about, teams that they were scrimmaging against are like, dude, like that's an NFL team. Like they're totally disorganized. They have no clue what's going on. They have no leadership. And, not everybody that is a great coordinator is a great head coach. And if McDaniel ends up getting fired in Miami, he will be a stud offensive coordinator somewhere else. That is the reality of the situation. But, you're seeing it in the NFL. There's the great debate right now. Like, do you want a guy that's calling plays offensively? Obviously, there's a lot of elite coaches that do that. I think you could argue the 3 best coaches in the NFL do that with Andy Reid, Kyle Shanahan, and Sean McVay. Or do you want it to be more of a CEO type where you're kind of just overseeing the whole process, like a Harbaugh, like a Mike Tomlin? Belichick obviously was very keyed in on their defense, but he kind of just oversaw the whole operation. Patricia did a lot of stuff for them defensively. And I think there's arguments to be made. And you're seeing that at the college level as well. But it's really hard. If you're going to sit there and call plays, you got to spend a ton of time in the offensive meeting room. You got to spend a ton of time with your quarterback, and that kind of takes away from what you're doing with the rest of the team. And sometimes that can hurt you as a head coach. Sometimes that can hurt you. Look, if Ryan Day was a solid play caller. I get this is the college level. It's a little bit different. But when he transitioned to just being the head coach, that was the biggest decision he's made in his career. And it's really opened some things up for him. And I'm sure he didn't like it. I'm sure he loved calling plays. I'm sure, he didn't fully trust the guys that he brought in to call plays. But what happens? Ohio State goes on to win a national championship, and I think they're better off from it. It's difficult to do both. You got guys that make it look easy, Shanahan, Reid, McVay, but you might be seeing the league kind of steer towards, maybe we don't need, the head coach out there calling plays. But obviously there's lots of examples of it working. Ben Johnson certainly seems to be the latest one there as well. But that's just kind of an interesting note there as it relates to Miami. But I've liked Mike McDaniel. I think some of the stuff he says, he's quirky, right, at the podium. Sometimes, he thinks he's funny. And again, we talked about this with Brian Kelly. We talked about it with Bill Belichick. If you're going to go to the podium and not just be flawless, which I think Zac Taylor is pretty close to flawless, right? Maybe why he still has a job. He just handles everything great at the podium. If you're going to be there and be kind of a jerk or be kind of a cornball, right, like Mike McDaniel, and you're losing, it gets ugly, and it gets ugly quick. But I was really impressed with how Miami responded in the game last week against Atlanta, picked up a big-time win. I think they will play solid in this game, and I think we're going to see a competitive football game tonight. I'm leaning towards the plus 7.5 as it relates to Thursday night in favor of the Miami Dolphins. Let's talk World Series. It was our prediction that the Toronto Blue Jays would host the World Series trophy, and they are a game away from making that reality. I knew said on the show that this series was going to be an absolute banger. I just didn't see any way that it wouldn't be. And this has lived up to the hype. Absolutely. Had some people out there saying, Dodgers in 4, Dodgers in 5. No. The bats for the Jays are just too good. Schneider's too good. And Vlad Guerrero Jr., everybody's sitting here, Shohei Ohtani, best player of all time. What a great player he is. Not taking anything away from Shohei Ohtani. Was on base 9 times the other night. That actually happened. But let's talk about Vladimir Guerrero Jr. That guy is a complete dog, and he plays an incredible first base, by the way, there as well. Obviously, if the Jays win this series, he's going to be World Series MVP. Clutch hits, clutch doubles, clutch walks, home runs, defensive plays, you name it. Vlad Guerrero Jr. is something special. And if you remember going into this year, there was like, oh, the Jays going to pay him? What's going on here? And then they gave him, $500 million? And it's like, well, was that the right move? Yeah, that was the right move. And at this point, it looks like a steal, to be honest with you. And this is a guy that's still a young guy, and just the leadership that he shows there as well. There's a lot of dudes on this team that are really, really good at baseball. But this is Vlad's team. Make no mistake about it. They rally around him. They look to him. And there's just the clip of Savage. We'll talk about him in a second. When he finished his outing yesterday, he's kind of going through, giving everybody the hugs, the high fives. And there at the end of the bench, Vlad's waiting on him to give him a big hug and just be like, yes, Rook. That's what we needed for you. It was a big embrace. And those two, it just felt like a great moment there when that happened. And obviously the Jays were in complete control of that game. The Dodgers lineup that's making billions of dollars probably, they've gone silent, and this isn't, a staff for the Blue Jays that's like, oh my goodness, one of the best, right? They're one who they started in Game 1 of the World Series and Game 5 is a 22-year-old rookie that was playing at single A level ball to start the year, and he was tremendous. He only went like 4 innings the first game, fine. but you're in a Game 5 situation on the road, Dodger Stadium, Ohtani, Betts, Freeman, Muncy, Smith, Hernandez. The list goes on and on and on the road, and he takes the hill and says, I got us. No problem. I got us. That split, nasty. And people talk about, the poise of him is just incredible, and, the courage to go out there and just the guts to go out there and do it. And that's all a good point, and that's all very, very true. But let's just talk about the fact that he's nasty, too. I mean, the slider, the splitter, locating the fastball. He didn't even really throw the fastball much. He just knows how to pitch. In a lot of ways, kind of reminds me of Andrew Abbott, I guess, from a Cincinnati perspective, just how he goes about his business out there. I get Abbott's a lefty, and I get he doesn't throw a splitter, but it's a guy that isn't going to sit here and overpower you with his fastball, knows how to pitch to contact, isn't going to miss over the heart of the plate. Nights where he doesn't have his best stuff, which I think he had close to his best stuff last night, but in starts prior, can go out there and still compete even when he doesn't have his best stuff. Abbott is so incredible at doing that, obviously, for Cincinnati. But Savage, what a performance. 22-year-old rookie. Looked unflappable. Again, it's not just the World Series. It's the World Series against that lineup. And they just come at you time after time after time. There's no let-up in that lineup whatsoever. And Savage did a tremendous job for the Blue Jays. And he's got him in a situation where this thing goes back to the Rogers Center. And, have two opportunities to win a world championship. The crowd there is going to be electric. I can't wait. I absolutely cannot wait for that. But, I mean, the lineup for the Blue Jays, they come at you. People, I just talked about the Dodger lineup and how many stars they have in the lineup. But these Blue Jay guys, they're absurd. And, you lose your most clutch hitter. I mean, Springer, obviously Vlad, you could argue, but Springer is incredibly clutch here in these, postseason moments. And he's been throughout the duration of the postseason. And the thing about the tear that he went on to end the regular season for the Toronto Blue Jays, he was magnificent. You lose him to that side injury, and then you got to put a new guy up at the leadoff spot. What's he do? He goes yard immediately. And then Vlad follows it up. He goes yard. 2 bombs, 4 pitches. Snell's on his heels already. And Snell, a 2-time Cy Young guy, obviously dominated the Reds, has dominated the Brewers, has owned this postseason, but he can't handle this Blue Jays lineup. They've given him fits, all of them, and it was tremendous. And Snell was solid in the game. He did a nice job of battling back, and to be honest with you, I don't put that game on Snell whatsoever for the Dodgers, but just the fact the Blue Jays just have, they're like, yeah, Blake Snell, we'll go up there and we'll give him the business again, and really, really impressive. And just the depth of their lineup. They all can hurt you. Well, look at Barger right there, and he's got a howitzer in right field as well for an arm, and he'll hit bombs. What's he batting this postseason? Like around 400, something absurd, 350, I think, something crazy like that. Varsho, great center fielder. He's tremendous. Left-handed bat. Extra base guy, will get singles. He'll do it all, kind of. Ernie Clement, probably my favorite player that I've been able to watch in this series. I absolutely love Ernie Clement. People that watch college baseball remember him from his heroics at Virginia, right? And he's just a ball player. He's kind of plug-and-play guy. You want him at second, fine. You want him at third, that's where he's been hanging out here of late, fine. He'll make great plays for you. He'll swing at the first pitch every single time, by the way, but he'll find ways to drive guys in. Even the sac fly last night. Wild pitches from the Dodgers, Jays moving up, just little things, baseball things, in the postseason and in the World Series, just as important as it is throughout the 162-game stretch, if not more important. And the Jays were just doing all the little things right in this game as, they roar back. Think about the adversity. You face an 18-inning game on the road. You go through all these pitchers and you lose. Heartbreaking, devastating. We talked about it on the show out. Felt like it's kind of like you're losing 2 games, which technically they did play 2 games as they played 18 innings. But how are you going to respond to that? And they responded in the best possible way. Didn't panic at all. Bat said they've been great all year. They'll continue to be great even against elite pitching. We'll get great starting pitching. Guys that we can rely on. A bullpen will close it out, do the job. Tremendous job from the Toronto Blue Jays. Incredible. And Jimenez, he's just like, Bichette not fully healthy, he'll come in and play. Not even a home run guy. Think about the dingers he hit against Seattle. And then Bo Bichette, I didn't even talk about him. And they were talking, the Fox crew was, to Bo Bichette after the game. Guy's an incredible player. And I was texting with a buddy earlier because obviously Bo had, he's not going to win the MVP, but like he had an MVP level season, kind of. The hits machine. And he gets hurt, obviously, at the end, misses all the postseason up until the World Series. obviously when you have a season like that and you've been with the Blue Jays for several years and you kind of saw this whole thing rise, had to just rip your heart out if you're Bo Bichette that he wasn't able to go out there and play throughout the duration of this postseason. And then he's able to work back and be available for the World Series, and they throw him out there at game 1. I was texting with a buddy, and I was like, God, they're putting him at second base? This guy's never played second base, literally. And then he's just making incredible plays at second place. Plug-and-play guy, just a ball player. Has done it so long. Oh, you want him at second? Yep, no problem. He'll be elite. And the fact that his timing has been able to come back. Baseball, obviously a very timing-oriented sport, right? And you go on streaks, right? Sometimes your timing's great, sometimes it's not. And to be out for that long and then come in against the rotation that the Dodgers have and say, yep, I'll just pick up right where I left off, incredibly impressive for Bo Bichette. And the Blue Jays, by the way, regardless of what happens over the course of the next few days, have a decision to make. Are you going to pay Bo Bichette or is he going to go elsewhere here this offseason? That is very much a storyline that needs to be monitored. But the World Series has absolutely lived up to the hype. Yamamoto will get the ball in Game 6, obviously through a CG the other night. It was incredible. He's been terrific throughout the postseason. He's kind of lived up to his contract, I would say, despite $300 million, kind of living up to the contract, right? He was in the pen, right, for the 18-inning game. He had pitched 2 days prior, 9 innings. He's, getting warm in the pen. It's like, dude, what are we doing? This guy's just a rubber band for an arm, I guess, relentless competitor. So that's going to be a tremendous, opportunity for him to kind of give them a chance there in the series. And then Game 7, if it goes to 7, you would think Ohtani, right, probably back out for LA. I don't know. That remains to be seen. But, Dodgers got to find a way to get the bats going. There's all these guys. And I think the world of Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts. And this has shocked me, the performance of Mookie Betts in this World Series. He's a guy that you can always count on for loud contact and singles and doubles and even home runs. He's been borderline non-existent in this World Series. Has absolutely shocked me. I think Mookie Betts is one of the greatest players ever played a game, to be honest with you. I don't think that's hyperbolic whatsoever. And then Freddie, too. It's like, he had the big bomb, right? And he, had the bomb, obviously, in Game 1. And, he did, or not Game 1, Game 2, I believe. But, Freddie, tremendous hitter, Hall of Famer, no doubt, first ballot. Right, but he hasn't been as consistent as I thought. Certainly, they were hoping for. They made the change there at their last spot in the order. They had gone with Pajes there, great glove in center field, but was offering nothing as a hitter. Then they go with Alex Call, who they got in the middle of the year. He's like, okay, what did he do? So Robert's kind of, just trying to push some different buttons there, and it ain't working. But what are you going to do? You kind of just got to roll it back and say, yo, we got Ohtani, we got Betts, we got Freeman, we got Smith. Muncy has been struggling there as well, but you kind of just got to roll it out. Teoscar is a great hitter. These guys just aren't showing up, and you got to give a lot of credit to the Blue Jays staff because they've done a tremendous job. Just a tremendous job. And then you get to the Dodger bullpen. Right, and that's the thing. You're kind of holding on to Snell. It doesn't have his best stuff, but you're still pushing him up towards 120 pitches. And you've seen Roberts manage that way throughout the duration of the series where he's like, yeah, even if our starters don't look great, we got to roll with them because our pen is just awful. And this is one of the worst bullpens we've seen in recent World Series memory, to be honest with you. And, these guys are, it's funny because you see the Jays, you see their bats, and you see the Dodgers bats, you see the rotation. You're like, yeah, that's top of the league, World Series stuff. And then the Jays bullpen, the Dodgers bullpen goes out there, and you're like, this is one of the worst bullpens in baseball there in the World Series. It's laughable, to be completely honest with you. So they're going to need, if Yamamoto is not sharp, that's wraps because they need Yamamoto to go, at least 7 innings, right? And he's got to be really, really good, and we'll see if the Dodgers bats wake up. But incredible. Can't wait for Game 6. Predicted the Blue Jays would win it, and now they have a beautiful opportunity in front of them. 2 potential games, both at home, and all the momentum on their side. Momentum's a real thing, even in baseball. And we'll see if they can pull it off, but really looking forward to that. All right, got a couple of minutes here. Let's see. Well, we'll save the Sam Darnold stuff for another day, I think, here at the show. I just think that, we'll come back to this segment, but the Vikings are going to be kicking themselves because they've got a lot of pieces in place. They've got the head coach. Do people think as highly of O'Connell now as they did? Maybe not, but come on. I get it's very much a week-to-week league, but O'Connell's brilliant. Right, what he was able to do with even Josh Dobbs, right, Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold, been able to be tremendous. O'Connell's that guy, but now you're in a spot where it's like, okay, Wentz, that didn't look good at all, right? And then McCarthy, I guess he's going to come back for this Lions game, 8.5 points red. How are you going to perform there? And Sam Darnold's there in Seattle. just being solid. And if Sam Darnold can go forward and, we'll see, play like, 4 or 5 years in Seattle and, they're a team that's a threat to make the playoffs, winning 10-plus games, there's going to be a lot of people in Minnesota that are going to be kicking themselves. It was a swing, and I commend people for being aggressive and trusting, their judgment and their drafting. But I don't know. I mean, you win 14 games in this league. That's not a fluke. And your quarterback plays at a high level in the process. He probably should have been a little bit more aggressive when it came to trying to retain Sam Darnold as your quarterback. Instead, you're not. You let Seattle outbid you. You roll with your top quarterback, and you took him in the first round, top 15 pick. But we said when McCarthy was taken, that ain't an NFL franchise quarterback. Just not. Just simply not. And I don't think it'll be very long before everybody understands that if they don't already. Ohio State, Penn State. That is the game Saturday, big noon. Ohio State really hasn't been tested since week 1, and then even looking back at that game, it's like, well, Texas clearly was not the number 1 team in the country, right? Texas probably should have lost the past 2 weeks. Overtime against Kentucky. Kentucky had opportunities to win that game. Overtime against Mississippi State. Mississippi State had opportunities to win that game. Those 2 teams, you could argue, are the worst 2 teams in the SEC. And, by the way, Texas got to play Vandy this week. That's probably going to be a loss. It is at Texas, and Texas has been playing away from home now for like 4 straight games. So that certainly is significant. But Ohio State haven't really been tested. And, people going into this year are sitting there circling, Ohio State, Penn State. It's been a sizable game for several years now. I made the joke earlier a couple of weeks ago that Penn State solely exists to give Ohio State a top 10 victory. That's literally why they're here. But obviously not going to happen here at this point. A program that's been in a downward spiral. It's a team that, preseason 2, right? I think, a lot of outlets had them at, preseason number 2 team. And, Drew Aller, I don't know what people saw. Obviously, hopefully he can bounce back and be okay. He's hurt, done for the year. But, I never understood that. But there was a lot of talent on this Penn State team. They lose the double overtime game to Oregon, and then things just spiral as they lose to UCLA, and then, they got firings, obviously. It relates to their staff. And then they lose to Northwestern, who's terrible. And then, obviously, they barely lose to Iowa. That's a good Iowa team at Kinnick. That's a tough place to play. No doubt about that. But the question becomes, will Penn State be able to give Ohio State a bit of a chance at all in this game? It's at the Shoe, by the way. It ain't in Happy Valley. So, I'm interested to see, are they going to let Julian Sayin cut it loose in this game? I think that's the biggest question that I have. We saw them do it against Wisconsin. Wisconsin, they do basically everything wrong, but they can't stop the run to some degree. Ohio State's run game, by the way, if there's one weak link to Ohio State, it's that, right? Because it's certainly not anything about their defense, and I don't think it's anything about their quarterback, and it's obviously nothing about their skill guys. So I think if you had to make one knock, it would be the running game. Penn State can stop the run a little bit there as well, but I would like to see Julian Sayin slinging around. And, again, there's still some guys here on this Penn State team. There's still some talent. So if they get competent play at the quarterback position and get some stops, get a couple of turnovers, maybe they're going to have an opportunity here. But Ohio State's so good, and I don't see Julian Sayin making a bunch of mistakes, even if they ask him to do a lot. But the reason why I'm still intrigued at all about this game is there will be a chess match that is taking place. Obviously, Jim Knowles was the defensive coordinator at Ohio State last year when they won the national title. He was terrific. That defense was incredible, and a very, very sloppy, weird, chaotic exit for Jim Knowles. He was all ticked off about the offer that Ohio State had given him, felt like he was disrespected, and then Ohio State's like locking him out of the facility, not letting him get in after celebrating the national title. Like, it got really weird really, really quickly, and he was like, screw this, I'm out. And he goes to Penn State. Now, that's not like going to Michigan, but that might be the next closest thing, if we're being completely honest here. And, Ryan Day talked about it this week. He was like, yeah, we thank Jim. He did a tremendous job for when he was here, but there's not really much of a relationship here at this point. So Jim Knowles is going to know exactly how Brian Hartline and Ryan Day want to attack him as the defense at Penn State, right? And Ryan Day and Brian Hartline are going to know exactly what Jim Knowles is going to do and the weaknesses that Jim Knowles has. So that chess match, the Ohio State offense, Ryan Day, Brian Hartline, against the Penn State defense of Jim Knowles, that is what I'm going to be keyed in on. And whichever side, switches their tendencies a little bit, catches the other one on their back foot, maybe a little bit off guard, is going to give them a significant advantage in this game. And that matchup, that chess match between those coaches is what I am looking forward to the most in this game. And that's why I still think it's worth watching. Ohio State could have this thing wrapped up 15 minutes in, and it's like, 20-0, see ya, that's about it. But there's a chance that Jim Knowles might be able to expose them a little bit on the defensive side, but I just think Sain's too good. Maybe different if you have Bill Howard playing quarterback, but Julian Sain, I think, can overcome that, and I think he's going to play a terrific game. But we'll spend more time talking about that tomorrow. Appreciate everybody for hanging out with us throughout the duration of the show. It's been another great week here at the Stone Shield Show. Off the bench, we'll be back tomorrow. Reed Mouse, 10 to 11, talking some FC Cincinnati. Got some Flying Lion guys coming on the show on Off the Bench tomorrow. Looking forward to that. And then we'll have our usual Friday show here at my show. I love doing our college football weekend preview. We'll do that. We'll talk Bengals. We'll talk Bengals-Bears. Hopefully we have an update. We definitely will have some kind of update on the Joe Flacco injury. We'll break that down. We'll preview the game, Bengals and the Bears. And best bets of the weekend at a 4-2 week last week. Here we come. And looking for another positive week here this week. And looking forward to bringing that to you as our final segment. As always, if you missed any parts of the show, it's totally fine. I get it. It's 11 noon on a weekday. Can't just sit here and watch me talk for an hour every single day. I get that. But that's why the podcast exists, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, iHeart, Spotify, you name it, you can find it. And, of course, we'll have plenty of clips going up on YouTube. Our interview with Craig Sandlin yesterday, a lot of it still applies here on a Wednesday. That will go up shortly. Reed Mouse, Craig Sandlin, there's a video on the Flacco stuff. That was filmed last night. That is up on the channel. Check that out. Basketball, folks, great conversation with Paul Fritchner. That went up on the channel yesterday there as well, so be on the lookout for more of that stuff. And our college football top 10 will be out later today there as well. As always, appreciate everybody hanging out. Appreciate everybody getting interactive in the chat. And we'll talk to you here tomorrow on the Stone Shield Show. Till then, take care, everybody.